Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board's regular meeting. We normally begin with introductions, and we'll start with Dave Pierce.
Dave Pierce, I'm an alternate member.
Jim Raymond.
Scott Ozana, town engineer.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Philip Devanza.
Carlos Adams, Select Board Representative.
Derek Horn, Town Administrator.
Thank you, everyone. David, you'll be voting on all matters tonight? Okay. First item on the correspondent action items is the approval or corrections of our minutes of November the 10th.
Motion to approve.
Phil Devanza has made a motion to approve as presented.
Yes, sir. Second.
Seconded by David. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passed.
I will note on page 4, I don't think Barbara intended her comment on her stairway to be, that third line from the bottom, to be a substantive comment, but if it's in the minutes, no harm. I just don't want.
So would you like to recall the vote and make a change?
I don't care. It's just,
Then, all right.
it wasn't an intentional, a substantive comment. It was a humorous comment.
Okay. I think we'll finish the correspondence and action items after our regular agenda.
We have the minutes of the 17th in our
17th
packet.
also.
They're not on my list here.
It's on the list.
Oh, and November 2nd. Excuse me. I thought it was the 17th only.
Motion to
Okay,
approve.
so I will, as pointed out by other members, we still have a set of minutes for 11/17.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Phil,
Dave seconds.
second by Dave. Any discussion on the motion? You try speed reader? No.
No, I had when I decided I didn't need clarification.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the minutes being approved as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So if the board members don't have any problem with it, I will finish items 2 through 7. When we finish our regular agenda. Okay. So, our first application has been here before. They are returning map 5, lot 49. This is a site plan review for a proposal to build a 4,800 square foot commercial building with associated improvements for an automotive/trailer dealership.
Mr. Chair?
I believe you have a public hearing on
Yeah,
the zoning
the zoning
amendments first on the agenda.
Alrighty. Thank you. I tried to avoid that by passing it over. All right, so there's a 2023 proposed zoning amendments public hearing.
It says with enthusiasm.
I hate zoning amendments. I never used to be involved in them. Okay, tonight is the public hearing. Derek, would you review we're gonna take them one at a time, so if people wanna comment, they can. We're gonna comment them on individually as opposed to trying to wrap them all into one. So Derek, could you please give us the First Amendment, sir?
Yes, for the board members' benefit, you should have a red line copy in front of you. The First Amendment is to modify the commercial industrial flex zone by removing any references to residential use, multifamily use, and mixed-use residential. This is included in Table 311, the Table of Principal Uses, Section 5.9, Section 4.3, which is the Table of Dimensional Regulations, and Section 2.3.9, where that is the definition of the commercial industrial flex zone.
Okay, thank you for that. Board members, comments?
That's what we agreed on.
My comment is, I think this is a bad idea. I don't think we should eliminate residential use from the commercial flex zone. This housing crunch we're going through right now is gonna end. And I think if we take a knee-jerk reaction by removing this from the zone, I think we've defeated the purpose of it being a flex zone. So that's my opinion. Any other board members wish to give an opinion or a
No,
statement?
I'm gonna save my comments till we get the public comment, and then we can deliberate on it.
Okay. I don't see a lot of people here to comment, but
Well,
we'll see what happens.
It's a public hearing, so.
So does anybody from the public wish to speak to this commercial flex zone amendment number 1? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 2. Derek? Or do you want to comment at this point, Jim?
No, I think when we deliberate, we can.
Okay.
have
Number
public-
2, Derek?
Yes, as proposed by the planning board, this would be removing various zoning restrictions for the location of tattoo parlors from section 5.4. Section 5.4 requires a setback, or as it currently stands in the ordinance, is tattoo parlors shall be located no closer than 1,000 feet to any school, church, or park, or from the boundary of R1, R2, or agricultural districts, and the use shall not be located closer than 1,000 feet to another tattoo parlor. So that would be stricken. And then also on 311, and I do have a question for the board, because the red line that Joanne has provided crosses out the use from the table of dimensional uses and removes the requirement for special exception. And I guess I would want to confirm that that was the intention of the board, because without that use in the table of principal uses, it would be up to the administrative officer to find the most similar use and determine what zones it's permitted in, based on similar uses.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Please, why don't you speak right up?
To add a little more explanation, the public acceptance of tattoo parlors has evolved. And when this was first proposed and adopted back when Phil was a young lad, the tattoo parlors had a I guess, whether deserved or not, more sketchy reputation. Since then, with the tattoos becoming a more accepted fashion item, I would call it, they're pretty accepted as in today's society, and we could not find, and it's a regulated business, we could not find a basis to treat it differently than other similar commercial operations, such as hairdressers or barber shops or, you know, manicurists or something of that order. So to the extent that we didn't think any special setbacks were needed any longer, in fact, we thought it was overly restrictive, because clearly the intent, like adopted, was not to allow any in town if you look at those dimensions. And it would be a viewed from a zoning standpoint, type of activity use, just like those other uses. We don't call out barber shops, manicurists, hairdressers, so why should we call out a tattoo parlor if we're not treating them differently for zoning purposes?
Kimberly?
I got Derek's question, it's in regard to the principal use table, we do have a line that says beauty shop, barber shop, and similar personal services.
So do we,
So I guess we've put tattoo parlors in that one?
if we,
I think that would be helpful to staff, because otherwise it's not defined anywhere, so staff would be forced. And I think based on Mr. Raymond's, you know, information, that would be a good way to kind of indicate that the board considers it most similar to that.
I think that seems in line with what we talked about.
I think it is,
Yeah.
It is, and I would agree with that.
yeah.
So does, Phil?
No, go ahead.
I say, does that mean we are amending our zoning number 2 to include tattoo parlors in another section in our zoning ordinance? Does that mean you have to amend this?
It's a question, I'll defer to Derek, is that a substantive change that requires another hearing? We have time for another hearing anyway, we've scheduled one.
Yes.
So out of, a conservative approach would be, yes, we should notice it as an amendment, which is one of the purposes of the public hearing, is to see what changes are being made, so that's appropriate.
And specifically, beauty shop, barber shop, and similar personal services is permitted in certain districts as well as permitted by conditional use, whereas tattoo right now is only special exception in the commercial. So I think it would be fair to the public to indicate that you were going to move it and have those same restrictions.
Now, these changes, I have to say, are voted on by the town, so if the voters disagree, they're free to not approve this, but this is our reasoning.
So I've deduced from this conversation that we are going to have an additional public hearing and notice that we are going to place tattoo parlors in with that other section in our.
Yeah, I would see if there's anyone here from the public that wants to comment on it,
Right,
but
no.
yes, absolutely, if that's the board's wishes, we would make that change.
Phil, you had your,
Yeah, no, I was just gonna point out that Derek brought up a good point, because there's many times that when something is left up to staff, sometimes the board or several members of the board are concerned with the decision that somebody else made, because when you leave it to being just, subjective, different people have different perceptions. So I think it's as Derek pointed out, eliminates that, or helps to eliminate that issue.
I think particularly where it was previously treated separately and more restrictively, it would be, well, this type of zoning, you can't list every possible activity, so you try to list it in broad enough categories that you can fit specific activities into them, and they don't want to fall into the shop center. We have to list manicurists and,
Yep.
people that do your toenails, but because this is treated separately and differently before, I think it's appropriate to add it, I agree.
any other board members? Seeing not, the public is invited to comment on amendment number 2 as presented. Len, come on up. State your name for the record, sir.
Just wanting to know, and
Wait,
my
wait.
apologies.
Len, sit down, please, before you
Okay.
start talking. You know the drill.
Oh, yes, I do.
For the record, sir, your name?
Leonard Stewart, resident on River Ledge Drive, and I'm also vice chairman of the zoning board of adjustment, on which I have served for about the last 10 or 12 years, off and on.
Thank you.
I'd like to be heard, and my apologies for being late, we've already discussed 2.3.9 changes to the commercial industrial.
We've already been through that, but I will reopen the public hearing for you to comment on that, as it would be proper to do so.
That's the basic point that I would like to be heard on.
So please,
And I must emphasize on this that these are my personal thoughts. This does not represent any opinion of the zoning board, has not been discussed with other members. I'd like to support 2.3.9 because I think it is a good idea if we are going to maintain any commercially developable land in town. The cases that I've seen coming through the zoning board, and also looking at a couple of things with the State Housing Appeals Board, there's been a number of decisions around the state, seem to be heavily tilted in favor of residential development. We had a case locally, there have been some others in other municipalities. I think Goffstown's biggest problem is we've only got Route 114 as a commercial development corridor. I don't see any other major roads in town that seem suitable for development, and in order to preserve that, I think we need to take the residential uses out of the commercial industrial flex, because what makes it commercially attractive also makes it attractive for apartment complexes and residential development. Looking at it from the way we have on the zoning board, we deny those in trying to save commercial industrial flex for commercial. It gets booted up to housing appeals and comes right back to us with the residential. I think that this amendment is a very good idea for the town, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to grow the amount of commercial tax base that we would like to see in town, but at least it would prevent the erosion of a finite amount of commercially suitable land.
Thank you, Len.
That's what I came to say, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can't we ask him what he thinks the tattoo pile is?
It isn't only drunken sailors anymore.
Seems to be the general consensus.
You know, there's some really, I've seen some body art people who are really skilled at what they do, and I don't have any problem with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak on either one or two while we're still on to both of them? Seeing none, we'll move to number 3. Derek?
Number 3 would remove section 15.3.7.5. This section currently requires a report from the planning board for zoning board applications related to commercial industrial project or residential use of 3 or more units. So this would strike that entire section.
Board members? This item, amendment number 3, is open to the public for public comment. Okay, since nobody has anything to say about it, we'll move on to number 4.
This is to, as proposed by the planning board, to remove section 15.8 violations in its entirety and refer to New Hampshire state statutes for violation procedures. So again, this is, I think staff had recommended adding in the statute, but after discussion it was felt that that may limit enforcement ability. So the board asked to remove that entirely and refer to state statutes.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think the board also discovered that it's already written in to other sections where enforcement actions are already. Is that correct, Jim? As I remember the conversation?
If I recall from Joanne's explanation, the town adopted, if not this wording, something similar as a town ordinance, but not as part of the zoning ordinance. So since enforcement is sort of sits on top of but outside of the ordinance per se, it doesn't take away that power and authority. And we were concerned about stating it here as well, but in a manner that, because it only cited to one of the statutes that gives us remedies, it would be interpreted as a limitation on the town's powers rather than a restatement or an expansion of them.
Thank you, Jim, for that
We'll entertain a contrary view
recap.
from Derek, but I questioned whether we wanted here.
No, the feedback that staff provided, I think, came from the new building inspector as what he had been familiar in at other communities. I believe the statute grants authority to the town to enforce under 676, so I don't believe removing this language should be an issue.
Okay, no more discussion on number 4. We move on to number 5. This was brought up, Derek, at the last meeting, so this was added in at the last minute.
Yes, so this is a new section under our sign regulations, adding section 6.6, and just for clarification, it's actually 6 electronic message centers. All electronic changing signs shall be equipped with automatic dimming controls, so the brightness level will be highest during the day and lowest at night. Manufacturer specifications shall be submitted at the time of the sign permit specifying maximum sign brightness. And in item number 3, Joanne has distributed a copy of Laconia's sign ordinance that relates to illumination. It is not recommended by staff. However, staff recommends using wording as proposed or remove and revisit next year. So,
May I, before you get to public comments, I don't want this to be a hearing of us, but I don't agree with the wording of this. Excuse me.
Why, actually?
I mean, for example, what does highest and lowest mean? Lowest means off.
Yeah.
And if you read this, manufacturer's specifications shall submit at the time sign permit specifying maximum sign brightness. Does that mean the maximum that the sign is capable of emitting, and are we requiring them to use that? I don't think that's our intent, so I think the wording just doesn't work. We hadn't seen this wording before. I think Joanne proposed it without a.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And I just don't think it works.
It doesn't really mean anything.
No.
What is the brightest?
Yeah, well, what is?
So, would the board be opposed to having this more informative wording included in the amendment so that we don't lose another year and get 4 more electronic message signs that you can't see at night when you drive by them because they're so bright?
I think we need to see an alternate proposal for us to consider, and we don't have that.
Is it too late for it, though? We have another public
No,
hearing.
we have another.
No, and I believe you can hold public hearings through January
Yeah.
under statute, so we can work with Joanne to
Please.
whip something.
Yeah, our caution that we expressed, and David might have, we don't want to just arbitrarily pick numbers, 50-foot candles or, whatever, 500 nits, I'm reading for this, without knowing what they are. So I think we need somebody with some expertise to advise us on appropriate.
It looks like that wording actually comes from this one in number 4, under C. So that is what they're using.
But they've defined what, I think, in the prior text, what those ranges are, so maybe that makes it.
Yeah, for specific times, but they say with no graphic displays.
Yeah.
So this electronic changing sign is I think, different than what's
Yeah, I think the back.
discussed up above.
If you look at
Oh, I
the-
didn't see the back, okay. I turned the page and saw the email.
Would you like to comment, Kimberly?
You said.
You already, what he said, you were
It's good.
saying?
Derek, Joanne gave us an example of what Laconia uses for illumination, the amount of illumination, but she said she's not recommending that we adopt it. Do you know why she specifically, what she feels is wrong with this from Laconia?
I think she had a concern about the enforcement, specifically going out and having the proper tools and training to actually measure the brightness, the foot candles, and the NITs, whatever that
Yeah.
stands for.
We could make the applicant, have one of our third-party consultants test it after installation.
Well, this all shows
Phil,
why.
Phil was the one that was next.
Yeah, going back to some of this, when we were dealing with this on it, one of the things that was brought up, when you're dealing with the electronic signs, depending on what the illumination is, the technology changes on it all the time. And when they went over to the LEDs, when you talk about brightness, you can't compare brightness of a regular filament light with LEDs, because LEDs work on like pixels. So you can talk about brightness, and when you think about brightness, it's how bright one particular thing is, but it's the amount, the spacing between them, because they're like pixels in a photograph when they go in there. So you have to make sure that the terminology that's being used applies to the technology that's being used. And Joanne was going, my understanding is that, on my recollection, is she was going to talk to a sign company about some of that. But we've had that discussion in the past because the technology changed when they went into the LEDs with the illuminated signs. And we had this discussion about the brightness and how to turn it down, and it was explained to us because we had a couple of issues with signage. And going back, probably 5-6 years ago at least, about that. So, like I said, the technology changes.
Yeah.
I think, there is number 5 on the back side, under D5. It basically says the owner shall certify as part of the application that signs will not exceed the brightness levels. I mean, we're kind of asking the fox to guard the hen house here, but we're also telling them what they can't exceed and that they're gonna have to say that the sign is designed to do that. I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, or do we want to continue to look around? We don't really have that much time to look for differences, right?
I know that Joanne did meet with Sousa Signs, and he provided this as an example of one community that he knew of that actually had measurements contained within there. I think
Well,
that-
obviously, this amendment needs more work, which we're going to look for more work on it to come back for further discussion.
Tim, I agree with the intent and what it's trying to do, but I also agree that it lacks the specificity that it needs to be usable, enforceable, and workable. Because, I think the mold has been cast that every commercial lot that's gonna be developed is now gonna have an electronic message board on it. I think they're gonna have to in order to stay competitive. So we're gonna see one on every commercial lot, I think, that comes in for development, so we need to do something about it, but I don't think we're ready for prime time yet.
LED signs are like the discussion we had about tattoo parlors. Okay, when it first came out, they were obnoxious and stuff because we used to have some over on like 2nd Street or someplace over in Manchester. And when you went by it at nighttime, because we had that discussion here, and that thing was up and like all of a sudden it's up there and you're bright and like you're blind and your eyes have to adjust to it. But they've come around. I mean, state agencies have them. You have them. They're all over. It's up and coming.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
We weren't gonna say that.
Yeah, you have it over at, you have the new one that's over at,
Three town buildings that I know about.
yeah.
So, before we go any farther, I'd like to open up the public hearing to number 5, if anybody has comment on number 5. Okay, nobody does. Good. So we're gonna send number 5 back for some more research and work, and hopefully it'll be a better designed amendment when we see it again. It's something we can endorse or not. Okay? So is there an action we need to take at this time, Derek, on the zoning amendment?
I believe I have direction on article number 5, or I'm sorry, amendment number 5, that needs to be reworked completely. And I guess, is it the pleasure of the board on item number 2 to renotice that, moving it in the table of of uses, to
Yes.
similar to beauty shop?
Yes.
Then we will do that. And I'm sorry, I don't know your process. Do you vote on recommendations of all articles at the end, or would you do that this evening?
No, I think at the end.
Okay,
As a package.
okay. Okay, then we will renotice for number 2. We'll take another shot at number 5, and it seems that the pleasure of the board is to, at this point, leave 1, 3, and 4 alone. Okay.
Any other comment on zoning articles from board members before we table this for this evening? Okay, tabled. So now, we can go, should have done that before the correspondence, actually. We'll go back to old business, and we're going to map 5, lot 49. I've already read one time what we're talking about. This application was continued from the October 13th, 2022 meeting. Does the board have any questions for staff or or town engineer on the subject of this application before we invite them up?
Should we grant this continuance while we're waiting? That's been requested. I don't think anybody's here for it. Or is that, no, that's not scheduled next week.
That's at your next
Okay,
meeting.
yeah,
so.
sorry.
What are you talking about?
Nothing. We don't have to act on it, so.
Oh, yeah.
I had a question or two.
Phil?
I had a question or two, but what I'd rather do is just check. I didn't have time to go through all the comments back from Moran, but on your questions that you had, not questions, but your comments about the plan, and I know they addressed them. I just gotta find where I marked, the one that I marked up, I apologize. But your list, and I'm gonna go by recollection if I don't find it. I have too much paper in front of me, that's why. The first thing that you had on your list, there was something about permit from Public Works, DPW for sewer permit. Is sewer permit issued by Department of Public Works, or is that from the sewer?
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. That should be,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
that should be-
Because further down, you had another thing about the approval for the sewer. Further down, so
Yeah.
that's why you had that the conflict on there. Okay, that was the only thing that
should be from GSC. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
The same point that Phil was just discussing, it shows up on sheet C42 as a note number 21 that this,
Oh, on the
yes,
plans
the
themselves.
new sewer accessibility fee will be determined by Public Works. And so, you know, that will be discussed, that note will be modified.
Okay.
That's not from my comments.
Well, it's the same subject, sewer fee.
Anything else from board members?
No, I don't know if Scott can answer, is what's on the table for the plan the same as what was sent us? It appears to be. Maybe Jason can tell us, same revised, date.
I do, I found my papers and
What
I
was that
found my
question?
notes.
Is it the same, is what we were mailed the same as what was on the table?
Yes, I don't believe, yeah, they haven't resubmitted anything. They did, but it was to, basically just to me, some feedback on comments.
Tim?
Phil, you have a comment?
Yeah, it's just a question, and I don't know if Derek can answer it, but this has come up in the past. On page 5, where we have comments like Conservation Commission, we have a comment that says no issues of environmental concern. And we go to Assessing Department, no comments, Police Department, no comments. Does no comments mean that they said they had no comments or that they didn't respond?
I can clarify with Joanne in the future. I know that police department has actively participated in TRC, so I would assume that no comments mean
Yeah.
they have no comments
They
or concerns.
typically respond to these.
No, I understand, but
I don't
sometimes,
recall if they did for this particular one, but
We can clarify for the future whether it's
Well,
no comments provided or,
that's kind of where I was going, because in the past, when we've asked that question, we were told, no, they never received anything. You know, staff never received anything back from the department. So it just makes it easy when you're reading it, because then the question comes up, maybe.
I think typically if they don't submit comment, Patty's pings them with an email
Well-
to see if they have any.
I can give you an example. The Conservation Commission used to say no comments. Now we say no environmental concerns.
Right,
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what it says.
right,
yeah.
that's exactly, right. Thank you.
Good? Bill, you set?
Oh, yeah, I'm all set, thank you.
All right then, anything else from board members? If not, I'll invite the applicants up to the table, please. Jason, we all have plans in front of us, so why don't you make sure the plan is visible to the gallery as well as to the front table so that the gallery can see your plan? Yeah, a little twist on that maybe. Is that good to the gallery members? Good? Okay, thank you, Jason.
Welcome.
For the record, your names, gentlemen?
I'm Jason Hill with TF Moran. I'm here representing Austin Hawks. This is the project applicant, Hawks Motorsports of New Hampshire.
And with you?
Austin Hawks, owner of Hawks
Okay.
Motorsports.
I wanted to hear you speak.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Mr. Redmond, members of the board. I'm just here to present an update from the October meeting. I believe most of you were all present, and you've had a chance to review Joanne's report. and that you're all familiar with this proposal, which is a two-phased project, the initial phase being for overflow storage of these trailers inventory at the site on Mass Road. It's for 186 Mass Road, with the second phase, which is the full build, which considers the construction of the office building and the maintenance shop and the parking associated with the retail use and operation, and the trailer storage area expanded to the south, and obviously the utility work and such. So that's depicted on the color plan that you all have. The key changes that we've made in the last month or so include, really, it's all associated with the rail trail property, which we were proposing to construct a detention basin within, and now have changed and updated the plan to provide an underground detention system within the subject property on the western southwest corner that has been designed to recharge, all of the storms in accordance with the regulations. So that was the primary change to the project. There's no changes to the physical layout of the site. We are proposing to also, a new addition is related to engineering-ish topics, which is there's a low point in the right-of-way area, the rail trail right-of-way near Mass Road that doesn't drain. We're proposing now to improve that by the addition of a new cross culvert that'll discharge into, basically it ties into ultimately the culvert underneath Mass Road. So that'll be definitely a positive improvement on the drainage, flood, typical day-to-day flooding, ponding of that low pocket. We've revised the landscaping accordingly to provide shrubbery along the front of this front display zone here. We've preserved this riparian zone, which we're not required to do by code, but it's a complement to, there's a wetland complex, which we're gonna basically proposing native grasses and some maples, river birch, trees in that area. And we worked an agreement with the abutter, William Roberts, who's here tonight. If there's any questions regarding the former Buzzell Road right-of-way, which crosses through the parcel, and I've submitted a draft conceptual that we're working through the final details of. But essentially, there's a passage rights which have existed, they've benefited from going back, way back, that will be relocated the lower portion of the, which will end up becoming a shared access in the utility easement to benefit Roberts, and a shared access easement to benefit Austin's property and Mr. Roberts' property, which ties in with the former right-of-way and extends back to the south, which rejoins this property at this location. And then we have a shared easement along a stone wall or an old woods road along the back of the property. And those details there's a conceptual agreement that's in place and has been submitted to the town. We have to finalize that arrangement, and including some work with the select board to, in order to get those documents in order and obviously finalized and executed, which we would be looking to do as a next step, provided we, once we can get through the planning process. And then essentially the access through the rail trail property would be, the shared access easement would extend, through this rail trail crossing as a part of that arrangement. Those are the key updates I've made. did we review the architecture? Or I can leave it up to the board to see where you'd like to go. But in terms of a site plan status update, that's where we're at. Like Scott had mentioned, and we did have a few technical comments, which most of which are just notes and such, but there was a couple of drainage comments, tweaks to the system that I wanted to get a heads up on with Scott, and that's why I engaged him, just as a going forward kind of thing, you know, like looking at these adjustments that I feel we can adequately address those comments moving forward, and that you won't see any subsequent change to our site plan as a result of, you know, finishing those comments up. So I have the architecture we can look at. If you'd like to go there, I can pull that up and just discuss any other topics that you may have any questions on, and hopefully answer for you.
Board members?
So, I mean, I looked to Scott, so all the drainage has been addressed, I mean, there are a number of comments.
So yeah, I had some comments on the storm tech system. Jason was kind enough to send me, I think Monday, he sent me the whole updated HydroCAD and the new layout of the system. He changed elevation of pipes, and the concerns I had appear to be gone. I will tell you, it was a cursory look that I took. I didn't have a lot of time this week, but I wanted to take a look before this meeting. But it looked like he checked all the boxes that I was looking for. I will review it further, but it looks good right now.
Thank you, Scott. When you were talking about the former Buzzell Road, did you say something about a utility easement as well, Jason?
That'd be correct.
What utilities are going to be in that easement?
So this new easement that we're working through would allow Mr. Roberts or that property owner the benefit of future utility installations, sewer and water and gas, at their own cost, at their own expense, but it reserves that right for them in that corridor that we've defined.
So the utility easement would be
Pending
for,
appropriate approvals, obviously.
the utility easement would be for someone else to, but your utilities are not going to
Correct,
be
it
in
would
that
be for the
easement.
benefit of the
Future
abutting
use.
property, William Roberts' property.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you weren't proposing to put your utilities in there, because I wasn't seeing that on the plan. Thank you for that.
I have a question
Jim?
on, does the, you probably, I'm hoping you'll get to this in a little more detail, Mr. Roberts can do that, but the easement will cross the rail trail. Are you requesting a second crossing of the rail trail, or is that the same driveway access that the project will have?
It would be the same access, and basically, Mr. Roberts or his heirs would be allowed, if there was ever a gate, key to access, with proper notification, allowed access through the gate and for passage through the property to the trail as it ties back in, which would be this aqua zone.
But
So there's not multiple crossings, it would be the proposed driveway for Austin's development would utilize both functions.
okay, thank you.
Which that's why they would have to go back to the select board, because select board gave approval through the rail right of way, but it was just for the Hawks
Yes,
property.
yes, I understand, but it's still the same crossing, in
Yes.
fact. And I guess the question for us, you, town, is when that approval is given, think about for what uses, because an easement has a scope of use, and we don't want to find that the Walmart that Mr. Roberts is going to build on his land is using that access point. I hope Mr. Roberts is not hoping to build a Walmart, but some other use that we didn't expect.
I mean, who defines that, the Board of Selectmen?
Well, it's a consideration. I mean, in the end, the use of the land will come before us, but when you give an easement, you define the use of the easement, permitted use, and that's something the select board should consider.
So, excuse me, but what is wrong with the umbrella terms, that the use of the easement is sewer, water, buried communications? What, gas?
Sewer.
Utilities in general?
Yes, I mean, you're
I think it's-
implying that
It's also an access easement, so you have to say access for whom, and I can send you New Hampshire cases when the grantor of the easement thought they were granting it for use for a single-family house, and now there are multiple commercial vehicles traveling over it because they developed land in a different way, and I think that's something we're entitled to define, we being the town.
I think
Did that
it's
answer your
zoned
question, David?
agriculture.
Nothing wrong with what they said so far, it's just what hasn't
the
been said. that
expansion
we-
of the word use.
Yes, yeah.
So did I also hear that the access to that easement to the rear property was going to be solely through the existing driveway and not through the existing easement as it approaches Route 114? Is that correct, Jason?
Yes.
So that easement that approaches
This would be
114?
basically extinguished, and any rights would be, I believe it's extinguished, and including any rights that the town would or would not have, which we found none. And that would be relocated to the new driveway around the subject property, around the development, and through the development, through a driveway that basically there's no parking we're proposing within this easement. It's an actual driveway around Hawks facility. And the easement's contained entirely within that existing driveway network.
Jim?
Dick, a question, we talked about this last time, and I know there's a good presentation made on it, but was the right-of-way discontinued completely or discontinued subject to gates and bars?
It was discontinued in, the dates was in the 1800s, so it was not subject to gates and bars. It was
Okay, so complete
discontinued.
discontinued. so-
But the two properties do,
But the town did not retain any rights?
correct,
Sure, okay.
not that I'm aware of.
Well, can I ask a question? If I understood, you weren't 100% positive as to whether or not it was extinguished? The
I
rights?
think it actually says on the plan it was, I'm not the record surveyor, but it was discontinued on March 8th, 1932.
Yeah, Hawks.
Oh, okay, so that's what you were referring to?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, sir. That's
I
correct.
wasn't sure if what you were saying was whatever existed here is being transferred over here, but
That's-
you're extinguishing this, but is there an intent because,
The intent would be to extinguish Robert's rights over that portion and then relocate or establish new rights over the new right-of-way.
the only reason I was saying, okay, bringing up, instead of extinguishing, can they be transferred? So if down the road it found out that there was a right that we're not aware of now, it exists in the new location?
I can't answer that.
No, I'm asking the question.
We could look into it during the select board process if that's in the.
I mean, there might be
interest
some
of-
rights,
of the planning
as
board.
Derek said, that they didn't find any, but that doesn't mean there are none. Something may
Derek,
come
can
up.
you confirm, do we have the town
Would you
meeting minutes? Do we have the town meeting minutes from 1930?
The meeting minutes of 1932, we can look at the town reports.
I
The town
confirm,
reports
yeah.
are available, so,
I want to confirm the wording of it.
yeah.
William may or may not have some information to shed on that original, the discontinuance. Mr.
Well,
Roberts is here.
we're sort of working out of our norm. We don't generally have
Sure.
residents who are here to speak as abutters speak on behalf of the applicant at this time. So we'll accept some information from them at a public comment time.
Sure.
Anything they'd like to add to the mix. So, board members, I don't believe we acted on the waivers at the last meeting. Is anybody going to contradict me? I don't have a record of that we did, because Joanne would usually, it says here, if waivers are approved. Well, apparently the waivers were not approved at the prior meeting.
Right, when I read it, I didn't think it was, because it said the only thing we did was accept it and the clock was waived.
Did we even accept this?
I can check my notes and tell you what it is. October?
But we told them that we were not going to approve the location of the detention
So we accept the application is complete, determine no regional impact, October 13th, 2022.
Okay.
And waive the 65-day clock.
Yeah, I see I see what it says here, but sometimes boilerplate leaks into these, so I don't want to assume
True.
they'll get changed or updated.
Yeah, we did. There was a motion made by Barbara, seconded by Jim,
Okay.
So we have 3 waivers.
for the acceptance as complete and ready for review. Okay, board members, we need to start at the top of the page then and work our way through the application, unless we have any other questions for the applicant at this time. I will,
Mr. Chairman, can I just speak to the Buzzell Road, because I do have the town report here.
Please.
So this is again the meeting from March 8, 1932. The vote was, we discontinue a part of the highway, sometimes called the Buzzell Road, from the point where it joins the Mass Road at Sawyer's Crossing, so-called, then southerly to a point where it enters land on the heirs of William L. Roberts. And that was the
Okay.
full vote.
So before we discuss waivers and other items on the agenda, I think we should open a public hearing and let the public speak on this application before we debate any other elements of the plan. Seems to me that's how we generally do it. And I'm getting a nod from my vice chair. So, at this point, I will open the public hearing for comments from abutters. It looks like they're gonna wanna speak, so you fellas that are at the table now may have to vacate your chairs. For the record, gentlemen.
Thank you. My name is Rick Chelman. I'm engineer, land surveyor, here with Mr. Roberts.
William Roberts, 23 Roberts Road. My wife and I own, through our revocable trusts, map 2, lot 59, which is immediately south, as Mr. Hill has mentioned.
So, the floor is yours.
Do you want me to clarify the history of that?
Well, I was just going to, at the October meeting, you may recall, I presented a letter to the board, and some of the questions you were just asking are actually addressed in that letter. The discontinuance is correct, exactly as Derek laid it out, and as I put in my letter. There was also a Supreme Court case just last year that talks about the rights of landowners in discontinued roadways. So what's being proposed here is to take those rights from Buzzell Road, which Mr. Roberts and Mr. Hawks have, and shift them over to the new location. The new location is also approximately 30 feet wide. It's not a 50-foot right-of-way, so it couldn't be for a subdivision without waivers and other things that I doubt would be granted, just guessing. And it's also subject to the gate, as Jason mentioned. So it's advising Mr. Roberts, I'd be disinclined to have him agree to a specific use because he doesn't have one in mind. He's just taking the rights that he has today and actually reducing them by shifting them to a smaller location and agreeing to the gate. In the unlikely instance somebody else came forward at some point in the future, I think it would have to come before this board and perhaps the selectmen, depending on how, or select board, how they grant the actual easement. But it's not expanding anything. In fact, it's reducing and changing from what could be 2 crossings to 1 crossing. So does that help at all with some of this? And also, to be specific, and I did send plans to Joanne earlier today noting this, and I think she was going to send them to you. I don't know if she did.
I did not get them.
Okay. Just with notes about some of the things I'm talking about, like the release of rights, both Hawks and Roberts, for this first orange section.
I have that plan, Rick, if you need.
Okay. So it'll be clear that there will not be 2 crossings. Those rights will be going away, and that would be part of the proposal going to the select board. So the select board meeting would be a joint request, as Derek has advised and we agree with, where both landowners and the representatives have asked the select board and have a discussion with them about how to have this crossing, which would be to include the utilities Jason mentioned, but also communications, because we don't know what those might be. Right now it's cable and telephone, but who knows what it might be in the future. But again, just taking what exists, shifting it over, making it clear and defined in the new location. Does that help at all?
It does.
I might just try and respond on a couple of ways to Mr. Raymond's questions about the rights that exist now. That you did have the letter which covered some of the bases for the existing rights. Buzzell Road was public, as he said. It was discontinued. That left us under current case law with a remaining easement, private, not public, to Mast Road over the roughly I think it's 3 rods wide, so a little more than 50 feet to Mast Road. But that's not the only source of our current easement. The current easement was granted by a predecessor in title to Nunick Holding, Clement Sawyer, who used to own this property and where the car wash is too, and even further down. And he granted the same day that the town discontinued the road, right-of-way to the W.L. Roberts heirs. So that was an express grant. The rights that remain after discontinuance is a matter of state law by the Supreme Court's announcing it last year. In addition, there's a section, and I'll just point to it. This is our property here and here, and part of our property here came from Clement Sawyer back in 1877, case law that was just footnoted in the TND engineering report, because it's, we didn't want to overwhelm the board, but we have an implied easement under case law because that lot was described as being along the highway to Scribner Hill, and that's Buzzell Road. It was Buzzell before it was Scribner, and so there's like three sources of the rights in that property. We would, our agreement is to release to the town, in fact, both Mr. Hawks, Nunick Holding, and the Roberts would release all rights that we have to get out to Mast Road via the old route. So there wouldn't be, to answer Mr. Raymond's questions, there wouldn't be any chance of 2 access points to Mast Road there. And so both of us would do that, and would, if this is approved, work out with the town attorney and the select board, not only the grant of easements for both lots, both ours and Nunick Properties lots across the rail trail in the new location, but we'd extinguish, both of us, the rights in the outer section, most northerly section of the old Buzzell Road.
See, now I'm very confused, because this gentleman over here said he recommended you not do that, and it sounds like you're doing it. What are we doing?
Oh, I think he said he'd recommend that we not have an easement that was just for a specified purpose.
You talked about a reduction in the width. I thought you were advising us that you were going to advise your client not to do it.
No,
I just want to be sure I'm clear with
Okay.
what
Okay, well,
you said.
let me clarify. I did say he was, in fact, reducing its width, but not necessarily the rights to access the back. So,
Okay.
the rights for logging and that sort of a use. I don't know, recreational uses. But again, he's agreeing to a gate, so that does provide an actual limitation on, because Mr. Hawks doesn't want unlimited access across his property. So that's part of this agreement as well.
Okay.
I think in terms of what this board could do, if you're so inclined, you could propose make a condition of approval, the grant of the easement from the select board as presented. And then it has to work through the select board with the manager and come back and say, here's the easement that was granted, as we described it, because if it doesn't come out the way we described it, that's different.
Where's the gate going on the back of the parking lot? Basically, or is it into the main parking lot?
The gate would be going in the front.
In the front? Okay, so when you're closed, you can keep that down and keep people out? Okay.
But not on the rail trail, but.
Yeah,
you know.
yep. Can you put that on the plan, Jason?
Yes.
Okay.
Board members, this is supposed to be a comment session, not a question session.
I'm
Here
sorry.
I am. I'm asking questions too, so.
We sort of ended up as
Defiance
almost
of my
being
own rules.
applicants. We were sort of being applicants as well, so I'm sorry if we.
No, I just want to make sure I understood what your joint opinion was, not if we had a conflicting opinion. That's all. Thank you. Anything else you want to add at this time, gentlemen?
May I have a question? And you've submitted to us a basic conceptual agreement with, is this substantially going to be what the final agreement will look like, or is this just the nature of a letter of intent with more?
That was more of a letter of intent. We've all met on site, and that was my attempt to reduce to writing.
I thought it was very good. I just didn't know if we're waiting for more.
Since that time, we've drafted and exchanged drafts of easement deeds from Nunick property to Roberts, and for that back section where we own to the center line of the old road that Jason is pointing to, we just make it clear, what may be the case anyway, that we both have rights within the stone walls. We don't have to just stay on one side of the old road, but we're going to try to make that crystal clear that we both have rights to use the entire old road that we own to the center line.
So that is being formalized, is what you're saying.
And the easement, our easement deed to them, as drafted just between the two private parties, already says that Roberts would release the granted easement from March 8, 1932 from Mr. Hawks' predecessor in title, but also all rights that we have in that very northerly section of Buzzell Road beyond, north of where the new driveway type easement would come in to where Buzzell Road is. And we haven't drafted something that says he would do that, but...
This sounds like a lot of information that should be in between you two as, and not a planning issue.
That was going to be my comment, though. We typically do not get involved in private matter, but if it affects the proposal that we're going to grant in that we would not otherwise grant it, then we do. And that's why this is, so let me finish. So I think it is a condition, or it should be a condition of approval, that the easement rights are extinguished, because otherwise we would be faced with two crossings.
Correct.
And the retention of the property rights that Mr. Roberts now has we probably wouldn't approve this plan. So I disagree with you.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think the extinguishing of that section of the right is important, yes. But all the rest of the discussion about the shared road in the back and all that, this is all between property owners, and it really isn't a planning decision. The first section outlined in orange, as Jim has stated, is important, is included in the conditions of
I don't
approval.
disagree.
No, but they're all one package, so I think we need to make sure the package is tied up in a bow before
Okay.
we, as a condition of approval. As to the actual, what they're doing in back, you're right, we probably don't care.
Well, that's what I
I
said.
just don't think we can separate the back from the front in what we approve.
So we need to get a sort of.
Back in front of legal
We see a
terms.
sort of a fits-all statement that states that you agree to the conditions of easements and you're both in agreement that that's.
Yes, but our agreement, to go to Mr. Raymond's point, our agreement is that there wouldn't be a limit on what the access could be used for, other than the fact that it's kind of self-limiting because we've acquiesced to it being gated,
Right.
and it's much smaller, it's too small to accommodate a lot of traffic.
Right. Okay.
And it's also is for utilities for both parties.
As I proposed a possible condition, the granting of the shared easement across the rail trail, which would include an extinguishment of the rights in Buzzell Road. I think those are two public policy conditions that, to me, make sense, so.
Good. We'll let our legal staff at the table handle that for us.
He's not paid for being here.
All right, is there anything else, gentlemen, you'd like to add before we, sounds like you might be. Anything else you'd like to add before you step back from the microphones?
The plan I mentioned that I thought was sent to the town engineer apparently wasn't.
Joanne was out sick today,
I
so she would
understand.
not have been able to receive and forward
She
it.
didn't sound good earlier in the day, so I understand. We're all in agreement with that, and it has been submitted, and it just has the notes, basically, to put in writing what I have told you, so it's in your file.
Okay.
So that's a part of what you see, what's there to see when you get a chance to see it.
Well, I guess we'll see it after they see it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
So, we'll invite the applicants back up to the table if they wouldn't mind. We have to go over some fine points here in the application. We have the issue of waivers. The first waiver that's requested is development regulations. It's the water conservation delineation of the entire property. I don't know what all the letters mean. Kimberly, what is those letters?
Wetland and surface water conservation.
Thank you very much. Delineation of the entire property. So we're going to take these waivers one at a time. I'll ask the board for comments on waivers. Do we have to get comments from the applicant on the waivers?
They have to, the burden's on them to
Right.
show
Right.
why it's appropriate to grant.
Okay, so-
It's pretty obvious.
So Jason, I'll have you address, number one, your first waiver request.
Okay, this would be for the wetland delineation of the tract, the entire tract. So we have requested that waiver because of the nature of the project, where we've identified all the wetlands jurisdictional areas within the developable, proposed development, to establish the applicable jurisdictions and the requirement to map all of the wetlands on the 25-acre parcel would really not, would be a hardship to the applicant, and there's no apparent benefit that would be derived from that mapping, since we're not proposing work in those remote sections of the property. So that's the rationale for the waiver of the wetlands delineation. It's the same rationale for the second waiver.
We're going to do them one at a time, Jason.
Okay.
Board members.
Does staff have any comment or recommendation on the waiver?
I see a staff comment on number 3, but I don't see any comments on 1 or 2, Jim.
Can we ask him, Scott?
I don't see any issue with that. If they ever wanted to develop further, then we would require it, I imagine.
Derek?
I'll acquiesce to the town engineers a little bit more in tune with this project, so.
Okay, because our finding has to be that the waiver will not affect the purpose and intent of the regulations, and based on Jason's comments and Scott's comments, can we make that finding? Yeah, okay. So I would move that we find that the waiver will not affect the purpose and intent of the regulations based on the applicant's representations, and that application of the, strict application of the regulation would cause practical difficulty, and on that basis we grant the waiver, noting that any further development may require the delineation of wetlands.
Well said.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Emily,
I was just wondering if we could combine 1 and 2 because they're gonna be the same, topo and wetland are pretty much the same concept.
Well, we'll use a similar analysis, but let's,
Okay.
the
I'm gonna
different
get in
zones.
trouble with the land use board. All right, so there's a motion been made to grant the waiver for wetland delineation of the entire property, based on comments from the applicant and a motion from one of our members. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. So the second waiver is for the topographic survey of the entire property.
That would be, Mr. Chair, a similar rationale for the request is that we have identified we've field surveyed the topography within the developable portions of the site, which are accessible and developable, in order to identify the, cuts and fills and any impacts to wetlands or other resource areas, and that there's a field survey, a topographic survey of the remaining 20-plus acres would be a hardship to the applicant with no apparent benefit to the general public, and is also consistent with the overall spirit of the regulations, the development regulations. So for those reasons, we...
Tim, I'll make a motion to grant that waiver with the same eloquent language that Mr. Raymond used.
Which I can't remember.
Hey, gentlemen, if I may, I'd like to ask Scott
Yeah.
about it, from
Sure.
the staff point of view.
I don't see any reason to require them to survey the entire site. It seems absurd.
Let me ask this, totally, somebody who's not an engineer, obviously. Is there any impact that the topo, the ground on the rest of the property could have on this that we have a reason to have to know about, or is it
In
sufficiently
this situation, I don't believe so. So in their stormwater report, they used a USGS quad to do their, the watershed delineation and everything. So that was, I think, sufficient enough. We use it all the time in applications like that, so I don't see any reason to make them survey the whole site.
Okay.
It's a big piece to survey for no reason.
So Collis has made a motion to replicate Jim's motion from the first one, and we'll get Gail to write it up for us when the time comes, because I don't know how to say it.
Well, I'll second it then.
Motion made by Collis, seconded by Phil, to grant the motion for the topographic survey of the entire property. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. The last thing is Appendix F, Section 2.3A, interior landscaping requirements, and this has been noted for Phase 1 only. Assuming that it is a requirement when you get to the Phase 2, it will be required to be done. It's not a waiver for the whole thing, it's only for your Phase 1 construction,
Yeah, and
provided we approve the phases.
yeah,
We have to approve the phases as
what you
well.
said is essentially correct. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Jim?
Of course, I have your plan memorized, but is there going to be landscaping for Phase 1? If so, what? And, why, or if not, why don't we?
So right,
need it?
sorry, Jim, actually, when I reviewed the regulations for Phase 1 being a storage area, it actually doesn't require internal landscaping under the regulations. Internal landscaping is required only in parking lots. So I almost questioned I'll still submit the waiver request, Joanne had identified it. So we are proposing internal landscaping in Phase 2, which would be on top of the Phase 1, in those areas. It only makes sense to put those trees in when we actually construct the parking lot.
Now, did you say that was in our development or zoning rights? That Phase 1?
Land development regulation.
Can somebody verify that, Derek? I would be happy to,
We would actually, given the note from Joanne, we'd be willing to plant the proposed shrubbery along the frontage in phase one.
That's my question.
As shown on our site.
That's what I want to see.
Yep. We would be proposing that
I think
shrub.
that's what you said, you were gonna do the street trees or something at the last meeting.
Can
made
you
a
just show
suggestion.
us on the plan what those will be then?
Sure.
C7.
I couldn't find it.
So it'd be this area here, a row of trees in front of the storage yard, which is consistent of shrubbery.
And the details on sheet C7, which
Yes.
is landscaping, full build.
Correct. That's how it's proposed on our site plan. We'd be willing to construct that landscaping row in the first phase.
Any landscaping forward of that to the road?
There's no proposed, within the rail trail property, there's no proposed disturbance other than for the driveway crossing. So there's no, other than just grassing areas that were disturbed incidentally, we to restore those areas.
And that includes the, if your agreement comes to fruition with Mr. Roberts, that includes removing the old asphalt driveway and everything else that's there now?
Yes, we would remove the existing curb cut and plant that with, it's actually, should be specified with seeded, loamed and seeded.
Is that included on the plans? That's not? If it's not, could you make sure that, condition is...
find it in the regs, so
I asked if as part of phase one restoration of the edge of the rail trail, they're gonna remove the old paved driveway that's highlighted in the center of that Buzzell Road
Yep.
access. So is that a plan note that will be
It would have to
removed?
be added to the set.
I think it should be added.
And we agree to it.
And the specific waiver they're requesting is regarding landscaping for parking lot interior, so I think that's what they're
So-
presenting is consistent with
Yes.
that.
So they do not need a waiver for phase one for interior
It
landscaping?
is unclear, is this storage yard a parking lot or is it not? So
It is
I
a
think-
parking lot, it's for overflow trailers.
So that's where, again, I think that's why they're requesting the waiver.
Okay,
It's storage of trailers.
Yep.
so it's not in line with what you said, Jason, that it's not required.
That's not an interpretation, let's see.
Yeah, it's, I think parking of customers from like a standard like retail use is different from a storage yard where your contractor's storing of equipment and things. You don't see trees in those areas. That's my interpretation.
Well, I
That
think
was
we should
what
move forward with the
Yeah.
waiver, and that will cover all the bases.
Yes, sir.
I-
But we
I-
do agree to the front, the strip of shrubbery being, that's shown on this plan.
So do you have a phase
Being
one
put in.
plan, Jason?
Not for landscaping, no. So
So you have a grading and drainage plan, phase one here,
Yes.
C51. Do you show that planting on that page, C51?
we didn't propose any planting in phase one on the proposal set that you looked at.
All right,
We
well,
asked
if-
for a
if-
waiver for it. That's why it's not shown.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I'm-
move.
I- Wait, before you
Confusing.
So what I'm saying, Jason, if you're saying you're willing to plant that row of bushes for phase one,
Yep,
please show it on your phase one
I know,
drawings,
you can't
Yes,
read
sir.
it. You
so
need
that
a-
it's,
I'll create a phase
Magnifying
one
glass.
landscape plan.
just so that
No, I
it's
know,
a record
it's
of it.
no.
It needs
That's
to
why,
be,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
So,
create a phase one landscape drawing that captures that scope.
Yeah.
That's part of
You
the
can,
process.
you could probably even add it
Which
somehow,
sheet
add it to
are
the
we on?
grading and drainage plan if you
C5.
wanted, as a landscaping note.
Okay.
You know, you don't have to make a whole new
Okay.
plan of it.
Okay.
As long as it shows up on a plan that's marked phase
One.
one.
Absolutely.
Okay,
By the time I
David?
find it, here we go.
Jason, in your previous design where there was stormwater drainage basin plus a driveway, effectively every tree that's on the rail corridor would be removed. Now that the drainage basins disappear, how far to the left and right of your driveway will you be removing the trees that are currently on town property?
Well, we're showing that area to be, as we had discussed originally with the rail trail people, that we'd be clearing of those trees for view to the site, into the site. And so
Could we-
we'd be proposing to remove
Could we-
those old trees in the
is
rail
this
trail.
relevant to the waiver at this point, David?
well, it is, because if you're clearing
Yes,
the trees, yeah.
Okay, I'm just asking if it's relevant to the
Yes.
waiver.
So we would like to clear that vegetation within the rail trail right away.
Do they have the right to do that if we own that land? The town owns the land.
I think we would do that as part of the access and easement process.
Correct, but they're wanting a wider cleared area, cutting down trees on town land to accommodate a private development. I object to that.
How wide? I guess I'm
Well,
not
no,
clear.
the way Jason, if I misunderstood Jason, stop me, but I think Jason was saying they intend to clear essentially the same area that would have been cleared if the detention area was in the right of way. But now there's no purpose for that in terms of the structural requirements of this project. They're doing it to accommodate they're wanting visibility, but that's cutting down trees on town land. And I don't think we should grant that right.
Well, if it's on town land, we don't grant the right. We would recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they not grant.
Well, I wouldn't, I think what Jim is saying, approve a plan that.
We're not
sure.
depicts-
I think we're going to be talking about waiting for the Select Board's decision before this plan is finally approved anyway at this point, correct?
I
I mean,
believe the recommendation was if the board is,
A conditional approval,
A
based
conditional
on
approval.
Selectmen's approval?
yes, subject to.
There also could be a condition that the tree growth could be removed, so the town is giving up something, but is the town getting something in return? And that is something that this board could discuss. You know. But I'm specifically really, is the applicant going to provide for the construction of the trail as something in return?
I find this a little bit, I think this is off base right now.
But this is
We're not,
something.
we're not negotiating with the Rail Trail
Right.
Committee to
No,
get
I'm
the-
not, I'm just saying there's something that the select board could consider. If the select board gives up a right, the foliage on the trees, is the select board going to get something back in return?
That's the select board's decision, not ours.
So I'm just mentioning that option.
I don't, repeating Derek, I don't think we can approve a plan that shows tree cutting on town property unless the select board has approved it.
I agree with Jim.
Could you do it subject to approval?
I don't want to suggest that we want them to do it.
A substantial growth of trees were removed in front of the car wash, and there was no discussion at this
No,
board or
because-
the select board.
It wasn't brought to our attention.
It's also a substantial group of trees removed in front of the other lot,
Yes, before I stopped them.
and I don't want to go there right now.
Yeah, I mean, what the right answer is, I don't know, but I think we have to, town has an obligation to protect town property, and, so, and this board doesn't
But
have
what
power
if
to
we
give
were
it away.
to replace those with street tree plantings at the required specifications?
But that's not for us to decide, it's on town property.
Sure.
You could make that proposal to the Board of Selectmen in your negotiations with them.
Sure.
So I don't know if we're going to be giving a conditional approval tonight.
I don't think we can.
I think we have to wait for the Board of Selectmen's answer, because if the Board of Selectmen comes back with a no, now we're going to have to see a different plan with the landscaping portion.
Or wouldn't it be such that he just couldn't clear the trees other than?
Oh, yeah, that would be a simple statement, yeah.
So that would be a way, and I'm not saying we condition it, that would be a way that you get it both ways, that he can't legally clear those trees. You can't give him a CO. And then it goes both ways.
Of course.
I think it's
That's
going to,
just
I
my
think it,
opinion.
I'm not speaking for the board, but
Sure.
I would be inclined to think that the board is going to want to hear what the Board of Selectmen has to say before a final decision has been rendered.
Yeah, can we at least grant the waiver?
Well, I was working on the waiver until we got sidelined
Well,
with this tree
yeah,
cutting.
Jason
decision.
threw out a wild card on us. Yeah, and I'm willing to grant the waiver provided, well, I guess we can grant the waiver for the interior irrespective of the tree cutting issue. because
Yes, they're not linked.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that, given the nature of this plan, whatever the wording is, that Gail would fill in. It's not necessary for the purpose of the regulations. and that we grant the waiver, provided that the applicant plant the landscaping shown on sheet, David, which one?
C5,
No, it's shown on sheet C7
C7.
along the front, and submit a separate sheet showing the Phase 1 landscaping.
okay.
Come on.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
I don't think you're right. I know, but I was counting on you to remember those things.
All right, any discussion on the motion to grant the interior landscaping
You're the numbers guy.
waiver? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right, so we got the waivers out of the way.
Counting on you to remember sheet numbers.
So, it says if the waivers are approved, a correct citation on sheet C1 of the set plan. Do you know what that means, Scott? On page 4 of your packet, Joanne has a note, if waivers are approved, correct citation on sheet C1 of the set.
So that's the cover sheet, there's a little block here about the waivers. It says the following waivers were approved by the town of Goffstown Planning Board on, it looks like the date needs to be added.
Okay.
Add the date.
So could you make sure, we'll make sure that that gets included in the plan set. Jason, that'll be yours.
Yep.
All right, we've talked about traffic at this site. Scott, you saw the traffic memo?
Yes,
And what was your opinion of the traffic memo?
I don't think it'll have any traffic impacts that would be detriment to the traffic in the area, so.
Board members on the traffic memorandum?
Just like,
Comments?
you know, it's 4 to 5, I think.
Yeah, you have very few employees, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I read it because it was submitted months ago, and that's when I read it, but I remember reading there's not gonna be, it's not a big traffic producer.
3 or 4 trips during the peak hours.
Is everybody good with the traffic
Yeah.
comments? Staff comments, planning comments, wetlands are located in the western portion of the property. I don't know what that is, that's not a question or anything to that. Does anybody,
They have them delineated. They had to go back and have them delineated.
were they done, Jason?
Yes. They're on
Yes.
Okay. Parking requirements met, 17 spaces have been provided. Board will want to require bollards along the driveway at the intersection with the rail trail. Did you not show them on the plan on the first time around, Jason?
I don't recall.
No, it does not appear. It has, it says ADA ramp with ADA panels at that location, but
Well,
I don't see bollards shown.
we're going to have to either defer to the rail trail committee or do what they've been doing on similar rail trail crossings. The bollards are specifically designed to be removed so the ambulance can get down the rail trail. So you're just going to have to be advised on what the requirements will be for those bollards and the numbers, but you'll have to show them on the plan as well if they're not on there now. David may be able to tell them right off the bat.
I have some considerable discussion about the crosswalk and the bollards.
Okay.
Maybe, I think, in a few moments rather than right now.
Would you like to discuss it as part of the planning board meeting?
Yes.
We're on the subject, let's
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Okay, on the subject of is there a painted crosswalk stripes on the plan? I believe the answer is no. In the frontage along Mass Road at this particular location, there's 3 parcels that have private driveways, all within 200 yards of each other. And my goal is to have consistency as to what is done with the private the trail crossing the private driveways. At the recently built car wash, there is painted crosswalk stripes and bollards, and the trail users presented a stop sign. to the left of the car wash, a private driveway leading to a garage and a residential home. At that particular location, there's no striping, there's no signage presented to the cars. There is signage presented to the trail users simply saying that there's an active driveway ahead, use caution. And the plans for the trailer lot as they stand right now, there's no striping for the crosswalk. I would recommend that there would be striping. And there's no indication of bollards, and I know that if Barbara Griffin was here, she would be a strong proponent for having the bollards in place, and that would be appropriate. Their plans indicate signage for the vehicle drivers. This simply says pedestrian crossing. I believe you're referring to what's known as the W11-2 sign, which is a person walking. I would maintain that that sign is appropriate for public roads crossing as the vehicles crossing a crosswalk, but not appropriate for a private driveway. So my recommendation is that requirement for a pedestrian crossing sign could be eliminated from this plan, because it's not at any other private driveway. So in summary, bollards, yes. Painted striping, yes. No signage for the vehicle driver. And there would be signage presented to the trail user, which is a standard sign the park department has already been using. It has the word caution at the top and then active driveway ahead. So it's a proper warning to the trail user to be aware of a driveway. And I know that in coordination with the park department, the organization that supports the park department would provide those signage. As part of building the trail, they would provide the signage.
Scott, I'd like to ask you a question about crosswalks on private driveways and being striped. Are we putting ourselves into some sort of a situation legally or liable-wise for a private driveway to have a striped crosswalk?
Typically, crosswalks are not striped on driveways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what type of legal precedent it sets if we do that. One question is who maintains that striping, because technically it's on town property. So are we now painting that every year, which, I mean, we have lots of crosswalks in town that we paint every year, so it's somewhat of an added burden on the town, but.
I'm not done. I'm not done. The next thing I'd like to bring up is the driveway next door is more of a road, if not a driveway.
It is a road. It's a private
That's
two-way
right.
road.
So a road requires a striped crosswalk
It does.
under
yes.
MUTCD rules,
Ye-
under the Uniform
Yes.
Traffic Controls.
Yes, and it's somewhat not at an intersection, so it's a mid-block, which is what this is. It honestly, I mean, it brings attention to the driver, so I'm not opposed to striping this.
I don't want to set a precedent that we're going to start requiring driveways in Goffstown
Yeah.
to have striped driveways.
So when you have the sidewalk right on the side of the road, and you can visually see it while you're driving, it's kind of, the driver's aware of the sidewalk there when they're turning into a driveway. The rail trail being set off a little, I don't know what the distance is, but it may be valuable to have it located there. I do agree with David that he's saying, you know, we have this small corridor here, and if we have consistency through it, it's also a good thing, so. But it's,
David, you're next.
Just supporting information. This board reviewed the plans for the residents at Hadley Falls, otherwise known as Factory Street. In that case, Factory Street is a public road. The developer is required to put striping down, stop signs presented to the bicyclists, and the standard pedestrian crossing sign presented to the drivers. But that's all predicated because it is a public road.
Derek?
I would add that Pro Landscaping does have a crosswalk at that crossing, and that is a driveway.
Jim?
I'm a user of bike paths in several communities. I think the more you can do to indicate to the drivers that there's a bike path there, the better. I disagree with the idea that, no, we don't want to take that burden on, because drivers are not looking for bicyclists or other users. And it's a small burden for the town compared to the safety benefit. And I would not be concerned about precedent. We can make rules each time it comes up to weigh it. But I think this is a high traffic area, even though there's only 4 to 5 vehicles per hour during peak hours, but that's quite a few if you have people on bicycles or walking. Again, those drivers are not otherwise looking for bicyclists. And I think it's our obligation to ensure that it be safe. And it means we have to paint it occasionally, oh well. I also disagree with David's conclusion that there shouldn't be signage for the vehicles. I think there should be. It's more important to have them signed than for the bicyclists and the pedestrians, because they're not going to be looking for users of the trail. And again, that's a small cost to impose on the applicant who's already proposed it. And it doesn't disturb me that there are some that don't have it. Oh well, we make things we let go. You just mentioned another development where we let them cut down trees. That doesn't mean we let people cut down trees every time going forward. So I'm not looking for, well, what Emerson says, a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, and I'd say that applies here. We don't do what we can to preserve safety.
My only rebuttal is that at the car wash, there was no requirement for signage to be presented to the vehicle drivers.
Well, we screwed it.
And
yeah, maybe we should have, especially where it's a road, not a driveway.
At this particular location, vehicle drivers have a clear view to the left and right of any cross-traffic situations.
You have more faith in drivers than I have.
As Jim pointed out, having the bollards there is something that the vehicle drivers will see as to there's an unusual situation here that the driver needs to be aware of. So painted crosswalks, bollards is adequate to alert the driver to be aware of pedestrians or bicyclists, which they can see fully to the left and right.
I have a question for Jason. That's right. Jason, on the plans, the signs that are in question right now, they actually say by others. So what was the intent with that? There's a few items along the trail that say by others.
Well, that was what David mentioned, that the signs were supplied by the town recreation department.
Okay.
And that
I was
we
just-
should have specified in the notes that
Okay.
that was the intent.
Okay. I was just curious. I think it was one of my
No.
comments on the plan that
So
what
at
the
this,
by others meant.
I'm going to
At
get
the
this.
proposed edge of the gravel trail, we were not providing the gravel, we were not,
All right, let's get
providing
this,
those
we're gonna get
materials.
this thing going here. So the board requires bollards, a painted crosswalk, and are you willing to leave the signs in that you had already proposed?
yes,
Do you concur with painted crosswalk and the bollards that are not shown on the plan?
yes,
And you'll show them on a subsequent plan?
yes.
The next item is since sewer and water are not installed till phase 2, will there be portable toilets on site? Do you plan to have anybody there, or is this just a drop-off and a leaving situation while phase 1? Trailer.
There's no public on site, it's a drop off and leave situation, no need for toilet. There will be no public or retail use of the site in phase 1.
Board members concur?
Yeah.
So there, the answer is no. You will not be providing portable toilets during phase 1. Says here, I was unable to locate the location of a business sign. Was this proposed sign, where is the proposed sign location? Do you show a sign location on your print?
There it is, it's on C42.
Okay, as long as that got handled, that's all I care about. So, does anyone have any issues with the planning comments, or are we moving on?
Scott's good, I'm good.
Good, we're moving on.
Those are my
Conservation comments were no issues of environmental concern. Thank you, Collis. Assessing Department had no comments, Police had no comments. DPW engineering comments, 1 through 6. Scott, what's your standard on them? Are these
These are
addressed?
very, these ones have not been addressed. Jason has reached out and said he will address them. They're all very minor, these plan
But
comments.
they have agreed to address these comments.
Yes,
to you.
and then, so the next one's the 2 drainage comments.
Yeah.
He has actually sent me some new design, and I've taken a cursory look, and I believe he has checked all the boxes that I needed him to approve that portion. So he's in compliance with our regs at this point.
But you wanted time to go through it, you haven't done that yet.
I can, I mean, they're not very exciting comments, so if I go to the plan comments, there's on the boundary plan.
No, you wanted time to review the new.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're not giving conditional approval tonight anyway, so I'll have plenty of time to review everything.
So, we don't have to. So the plan comments and the drainage report comments are being satisfactorily answered by the
Yes.
applicant to you.
Yes.
DPW recommended approval condition sewer permit from the Goffstown Sewer Commission, driveway permit.
Do they need that now, or do they?
Oh,
need
the driveway
phase two?
permit's incorrect. They're on a state road.
Oh, so that's a
That's,
NHDOT?
yeah.
And do they need sewer permit for phase 1, or
That
just?
would be part of phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2. So.
Well, I would venture to say, and maybe David would chime in on this, I think they need to have a sewer permit to even do phase 1, because without the sewer permit, you can't do phase 2. So I would think if you're gonna invest in phase 1, wouldn't you wanna make application for the sewer
Well, but
permit?
that's their choice. I mean, that's the question. We may condition phase 2 on having it. but
Okay,
it's
we
up-
can leave it as that.
I don't
just-
care, if the applicant wanted to
Yeah.
go forward.
They've
with
already
phase
been
one.
before the sewer commission, as I recall, and we've given them, we've given them a green light that there is a room in the system for
Okay,
them to
okay.
be.
So that's number
satisfies-
9, so that's,
That-
that
that's-
you're
that's-
talking about number 9.
It sounds like that's
Right.
not a biggie either way.
The actual permit to construct,
Yeah, we're
That
not
goes back
crossing the
up.
road or anything to, the sewer's on our side of the highway, it's outside of the road work, so.
Yep. You'll have to do a whole drawing on how you're gonna connect to the sewer, that's another step.
They have that included in these plans.
Okay, good. All the rest of these are standard,
What-
The-
Mr. Chair, question
Dave?
back on the
Go
sewer.
ahead.
Twice.
When would the connection be made into the sewer line, phase 1 or full build? Because it appears that it's gonna be right next to the driveway. So you would not, the timing of doing all that.
Yeah, it's a means and
construction.
methods question. It's feasible under each condition. It's been designed, the connection details have been provided. I would rely on whether or not the contractor in Austin would choose to make that connection as part of their work, and that they would get the sewer connection, file the paperwork at that point in time.
well, if it's going under the paved driveway.
Yeah,
you
it's
don't wanna
going
rip
under
out-
your pavement. so
You're
you
not gonna
probably
wanna rip out your
yeah.
pavement to do that after, so
Yeah.
you'll have to, so
It's going under the paved portion of phase 1, so.
So I would think that you'd want to pursue that prior to phase 2. Even if you only stub it into the property and cap it somewhere. Dave?
Jason, plan C41,
Yeah, so
which is the phase 1. It's not clear how much asphalt's being put down for the driveway? Where does the asphalt stop and the gravel start?
At the approximate edge of the rail trail. So there's a solid line, basically right at the proposed
Yeah,
panels. Yeah,
Just to the south of the
I guess it's
ADA
not
plates, there's a
yes,
line.
correct.
I would recommend that asphalt be beyond, rather than in the middle of the rail trail, the asphalt should go beyond the rail trail, to the south of the rail trails.
I accept that
What,
updated scope.
10 feet south of the,
May I make a suggestion, Mr. Chair? They're gonna have to have a, since there's a gate being added, that'll have to be set back from.
On our property, yeah.
That'll have to be set back for fire reasons. They have to be able to get out of the truck and open the gate.
Yeah,
So it might be appropriate to take that paving back to the,
you know,
to the
he needs
gate.
to put asphalt sufficient for the, where the gate is too.
Yes, I agree to that.
I would disagree to
I
have
agree to that.
asphalt ending in the middle of
Comment.
the trail. Yeah.
We can add that to the list.
And you're gonna do all the drainage for phase one, right?
Yes, well, except for one catch basin.
Well, let's just say that the storm tech system is gonna be
Correct.
installed in phase one.
Yes,
And the depth of your, do you have a cross-section on your pipe? It looks to me like you're gonna wanna get your sewer in, because the sewer is under the drainage, as I would recall, under most construction standards. I doubt if your sewer is gonna be on, over the top of the drainage in the parking lot, unless your drainage is 8 feet in the ground.
Drainage is
You
at
certainly
pretty
don't
much
wanna
at
dig your
minimum
sewer
cover.
line under your new drainage line. So I would suggest you review this sewer business with your client and come back with a definitive answer on your sewer connection, okay? You can do your elevations and get back to us on that. Scott, what about the rest of the approvals here? These are all pretty standard stuff.
Yeah, nothing big. Actually, number 24 is something new. I don't remember if it was the last meeting, but the point was brought up that we have all of these stormwater treatment facilities going in on private properties, and there's all these maintenance, these maintenance procedures that are required per our regs, and they end up in the back of the drainage, or the drainage study of the project. And there's really no way, there's no method right now for us to follow up with these applicants. I'm sure we could go out and look at each one, but if we have this condition that requires them to report to us when they do their inspection, however many times a year that they do it, per what their manual says they should, I'd like to see those reports sent to my office so that we can review them and make sure
Well, I
they're
think
being
that's a
done.
pretty easy fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've struggled with this for years. and-
Yeah.
So Scott, why don't you rewrite 24 to your satisfaction and submit it to Jason for his
Okay.
plan set, so he can include it as a note on his plan set?
Okay.
Okay, anybody have any issues with 9 through 24 at this point? Board members?
Number 14's a repeat, and number 10,
Well, driveway permits in DPW are non-existent because it shouldn't even be there.
yeah, but it should.
It's the same as comment number 10.
Yeah,
So that
but I
needs to
think
go-
comment 10 should be from New Hampshire DOT, which I
Right.
believe you've already been working with, Jason?
yes.
DOT for your permit, yeah.
Yeah, it's pending, they have the current plans, and it's under a final review,
Okay.
so to say.
Is there an establishment of any kind of an okay, here's the escrow payments made in town prior to pre-construction.
Yeah.
Are we requiring that a certified as-built of this project be submitted?
I believe it is.
Isn't that in our regs, or am I just imagining that it is?
We go over this every time, but then we find out that we have no way to check that the project was
No,
installed in
No,
accordance
no,
with
it's
it.
supposed to
you know
have
what,
that, but if our regs require it, then it's standing requirement.
We've raised this before, yeah.
Well, if it's a standing requirement, it could be listed as a...
So we will, I need to add that. I put in the one that, my comment that's usually for like a subdivision and not the site plan as-built one, so I'm sorry about that.
So we'll get some kind of a statement in there about
Yeah.
certified. that the project was built in accordance with the submitted plans. Fire Department, revised comments. Go ahead.
I'm losing track of things. Are we heading for an approval with conditions?
No.
Okay. This feels like a lot's
Yes.
coming back to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of these things will be fixed before you see them again,
Okay.
comment-wise and approval-wise.
All right, so we'll have, Scott, would you mind advising Joanne when you get a chance on the corrections on the approval conditions? on
Absolutely,
what
yeah,
is what?
I'm taking notes, so
Right.
I can touch base with her when she's back in.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir?
this is perhaps a DPW item. And Justin, I'm referring to page C51, which
Yep.
is drainage plan for phase 1.
Yep.
You have, to the right of the driveway, you have catch basin number 3,
Okay.
which empties into a 275-foot-long pipe ending at drainage manhole number 5, which is going to be cut into a 30-inch culvert, existing culvert. The rail trail has been currently fully built starting from the area of where we referred to Buzzell Road and going towards the town. And the construction to install drain hole number 5, being that the center of the center of that structure is just 3 feet from the edge of the trail, undoubtedly you're going to make an excavation hole into the trail in order to put the structure in. And so I would like to see an additional condition that any disturbance of the existing rail trail, specifically the 10-foot wide existing gravel surface and 3-foot long grass shoulders, west of center line 279 plus 85, shall be suitably repaired. And furthermore, that the material used for the gravel surface shall be a commercial product that's known as Gulfstown Trail Blend, which is available at Mount Williams in Ware, or the equivalent material, which is could be tested to meet Gulfstown DPW SIP specifications for trail material. So I would like that condition because you are going to be disturbing a built infrastructure to put that manhole in, and I would like to see a condition that the trail be suitably restored.
Was the introduction of this manhole and that pipe, was that, where did this come from? Was this something that?
That was at my request, that's
Your
to solve,
request?
so if
Okay.
you've driven by after a rain, there's a giant lake
Yep.
right there.
I just didn't know where this was come from, because this is first I've heard of this hole.
It wasn't on the previous set.
It wasn't, yeah, it was it was from one of my comments.
Now,
And
is that-
I was concerned the driveway was just gonna actually make the puddle worse. I assumed it would get deeper with the driveway.
Now,
And Scott is correct, there, water is going to puddle
Yeah.
or pool on the right of the driveway, and there needs to be a way of conveying that water 275 feet to an existing stream and culvert.
Is that within the DOT right-of-way or within the town right-of-way, Scott? The
It
little
actually
beach?
looks like it's in the DOT right away.
And then the termination of the drain manhole number 5 in the rail trail is actually in the town right-of-way at that point, right?
Correct.
Correct.
So you're
It's
gonna have
tying
to-
into the state system. I
That's
don't know
an
how that works.
The drain manhole number 5 is an existing
It
structure?
is not, it's a new one that they're gonna cut into that
That's a
line.
new
Okay.
storm
So,
drain, drains.
They're gonna be,
Oh, wow.
there's gonna be multiple permits involved with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, that's
DOT's
fine.
gonna
That's
review
okay.
this and they'll,
Okay,
that they may want some type of drainage easement. Now that I'm looking at it, we probably would require one as well, because it's,
well, you work it out with the
Yeah.
applicant. I just brought it up because I'm looking at where it's located. All right, so the,
I just want to bring it into the record because this is probably something that we'll discuss at a pre-construction meeting for this project. But this 275-foot drain line we just discussed is between 3 and 10 feet from the rail trail, so the construction of that needs to be, when you do your trenching, it needs to be respectful for the trail passage. And so that's something that we can work out in pre-construction meetings to preserve the integrity of the trail when that trenching is done.
Sure.
And then items after 16, the storm check, on page 7 of the approval conditions in our packet. We got more approval conditions that mirror the recommendations on the prior page, but there's a lot more, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Scott, these are all non-DPW. These look like fire.
These are fire's comments.
Yeah. Okay, so,
The number 18 is, someone just must have missed that the sign was on the plan.
so I'm gonna make sure that the applicant gets a copy of this. I'm sure Joanne has emailed him a copy of these conditions. If not, we'll make sure he gets those conditions.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anything else you'd like to add at this time? You've heard what needs to be corrected and added to it and everything else that goes with it. We're looking forward to, Derek, how soon before they get on the agenda with the Board of Selectmen for a consideration of this?
So, in my discussions with Mr. Roberts, I hadn't had the chance to talk to Jason about this, but I believe it was my goal to bring the easement language to the board after approval, that any site plan approval would be conditioned upon the relinquishing of rights to that portion of Buzzell Road and the relocation of the easement, and bring that to the board. And the board has a process under 4114A where they are required to have 2 public hearings to do that at that time.
So how long does that process take? I'm trying to figure out.
It takes, the public hearings are usually 14 days apart with a vote, I think it's 10 to 14 days after, so it's a month-long process.
And how long is the notice for the public hearing?
7 days.
7 days.
Yep.
And that's after the applicant requests to be in front of the board, correct?
Yes, we haven't seen, again, we would have to work with the town attorney on what would be appropriate easement language, because again, this lot and lot 259 would be relinquishing rights to a portion of Buzzell Road. So we want to make sure we indicate that, and then the types of utilities that can cross in there, so.
So does this board want to have the decision from the Board of Selectmen before we consider a final decision?
I don't think we need to, because the bones of the agreement are laid out by what was presented to us, and whether the select board approves before or after isn't going to change our analysis unless there's some likelihood that the select board would add new conditions. The issue that I have greater concern on is you're giving any of the town's trees.
Trees, right.
Yeah, and that's a separate issue,
Right.
and on that,
Well, could that be tied to the selectmen's decision if,
I'm not willing to suggest to the select board that they should approve that. I mean, that's a separate consideration.
we're not making comment, are we?
Well, we may make comment
Okay.
on that, but so I think there's separate considerations by the select board, whether they do it before or after. Again, I don't care,
I'm just looking at our upcoming meeting
Treat them
schedule,
up
Jim.
separately.
Just trying to figure out how to get him into another meeting here.
And we can go ahead and give the approval subject to, but if we approve a plan that does not show trees being removed, select board doesn't have the authority to countermand our plan, but they do have authority over town-owned land, so I guess they could do whatever they want. Trees.
Are there a portion of trees that are needing to be removed for DOT purposes?
For the driveway.
The driveway
The curb
definitely,
cut, yes.
but I think you've given them, I assume when you give them that access easement that they were given rights to clear. for the
Yeah, I don't know
driveway.
that we've ever defined that in the past when we've
Okay.
had crossings of the rail trail. So
Yeah.
I guess we'd want us, the select board would need to see which portion is, I guess, required under the DOT permit, and if you're going beyond that, if you're requesting any of that, so they can see all of that and consider if it's two separate, call us, Steve.
Well, let me ask Dave. Dave, are the trees in question on the inboard side of the rail trail to the property or on the street side of the property?
They are on the south side of the rail trail.
Yeah.
Forget north and south. Inside of the
They're not a
rail
site
trail?
distance issue,
They are
that's-
between the trail and the applicant's property.
Okay, so the drainage wouldn't affect that probably because the
I
drainage is
think
shown.
the drainage might affect that.
It shows it on the outside of the rail trail, doesn't it? On the street
The
side.
trees are in the rail trail right of way, and our drainage does not impact that section of the rail trail whatsoever. It's roughly right here.
No, but the other,
Drainage goes on the roadside.
the other one does, the one that's on in the parking lot there.
Jim, I'd
It's
say,
running along the tree
Please, Jim,
line.
speak up.
I'd say we're speculating now on what the applicant was
Right,
really
I'm
gonna wanna
just-
do. So why don't we, this is gonna come back to us anyway, why don't we say to the applicant, if they wanna come back with a proposal, we'll entertain it, but absent that, we won't, and it'll be up to the select board, but
Well, what we could do is we could schedule a meeting where they could correct all the things
Yeah.
we've talked about tonight, except for the issue with the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, we-
Should
well, we
we
can make-
correct that at the next meeting and accept it, it would be a very quick meeting for them to discuss the Selectmen's proposal for the rail trail area, and that would make a very short meeting out of it.
I'm fine. I don't wanna hold them up to wait for the
Well,
select.
I'm trying to
board, yeah.
get a
I think it's
a
fair to
date certain.
get them back when they can and get through, because the rest of it is planning items that we can talk through.
So December 15th, that's too soon for you to submit everything for packets.
It's too quick. It's
Yeah,
a quick
so
turnaround. I
we're
don't
really
even know
looking
if
at
you can
January the
physically do
12th. We're looking at January the 12th, Jason, for the next meeting. That you could have corrected plans and submitted by. Is that all right with you?
Submit by the 12th?
No,
For the next meeting.
on the
So when
12th.
would those need to be submitted?
It's
by?
typically 21 days. Does that
I don't know
sound-
I don't know the numbers because I'm not
That
the
means like
planning.
No.
this week, essentially.
No, for us, it's 10 days,
10 days, I thought.
10 days before.
10.
Just not a new application.
All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you'd have to have stuff in before January 1st with the corrections we've talked about on the plan, showing the bollard, showing striping.
Yes, that's fine.
All that kind of stuff, because then we could review those nuts and bolts
Yeah,
and maybe get them out of the way, discussion-wise.
Sure.
And then the final discussion would be on the decision
The only thing
between,
I'm not sure of is the last piece you just said, the drain line.
well,
I
that's
don't
part of the
understand that
selectmen's thing.
comment. Okay, so that's not for you guys to consider,
Well,
whatever
if it's
that
gonna
meant.
involve trees, we don't have the authority to make decisions
Well,
on trees.
Okay,
But
that's
we're,
fine.
but we're
I just wanted
approving a
to-
plan that will show certain things, so.
I just didn't know what it meant, the statement, that's all.
Getting awfully confused.
But there's nothing that restricts him from scheduling the select board meeting. He can go forward concurrently, it's just,
No, they could. I didn't, it was my preference not to bring
That's
an
fine.
easement back to the select board if this board was going to move the location or anything like that.
Maybe they could even have the conversation about the trees sooner than later, just to help with moving this
They
along.
could get a consensus possibly.
Yeah.
Is that possible, Carlos?
Well, I mean, my sense is the select board's gonna wanna see everything taken care of before, they wanna be the last stop.
it's okay.
Take care of, brush, mind your Ps and Qs and bring it to the select board.
Including planning?
The package is all put together, that's my sense.
Okay.
So they're gonna want us to either have an approval or a
A conditional
For them?
approval,
Yeah.
yeah.
conditional approval?
That's fine, we can do that, we do that.
All right, so why don't we get him back here on January 12th? That will give him time to get his stuff done and get his plans submitted to the office, and we can see him, so
I'll move that we continue this to January 12th.
Second.
that's okay with you, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the motion to continue to 1/2/23, I think we're on 23. Carlos, you second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, extensions? We'll see you on the 12th.
That hearing just illustrated that work expands to fill the time allotted for it.
I know, you and I, we're not going fast.
You know, I'm trying, I wanna get it done, but we've got a lot of other stuff here tonight.
Yeah, no, that's right, I didn't move it.
All right, so we have map 30, lot 46-1. It's a discussion on the site plan at the medical facility at 95 South Mass Street. Are you up to speed on this, Scott, that you can help us out with it?
I am up to speed.
How about you, Derek? Have you been involved in this?
I have not been involved in this. I did get a chance to read some of the correspondence late this afternoon, so I'm gonna rely on Scott for most of this.
Okay, Scott, you're going to be the authoritative figure on this application tonight, and we're going to look to you for answers when we have them, questions.
Okay.
So, at this point, Scott, could you give us a rundown on why we're here?
So, 89 South Mass Street came in earlier this summer or it might have even been the spring, even early winter or late winter, to basically expand their parking lot, add a few parking spaces and repave. They went through the whole planning board process, were approved. Construction began this summer. DPW had a pre-construction meeting with Keach Nordstrom. The representative of the applicant was Chris Nickerson Design. I don't know the name of the gentleman that was there in their stead. And then the
Josh Bruno.
Josh Bruno, and then the contractor. One of the questions that came up last time was pictures or site inspection, and Eric was our representative for DPW. He allowed the use of pictures for when the drainage was installed. He gave them the go-ahead to take pictures instead of, having to call somebody to come out and look at stuff. So that was their consensus. It was pretty, from what I understand, it was pretty informal. They didn't even do a sign-in sheet or anything for this. It was on-site pre-con. It was quick and dirty. So fast forward through the summer, work commenced. We didn't hear much from them. We didn't poke them from over at DPW. We didn't reach out. But the neighbors to the east, the Hill houses, contacted Joanne with concerns of drainage in the back. So there's a leach and catch basin in the rear corner of the property, or of the medical building's property, real close to the Hill house's property. The issue at the time was there was the grate that was in place. There was no grading to it. The water couldn't get into the grate. The Hill houses pointed to the fact that there was an existing leach and catch basin that's buried in the corner, and I think he had mentioned it during the planning process. So the applicant has, after that initial contact from the Hill houses, we tried to make contact with Chris Nickerson Design and Keach. Keach Nordstrom did reply to us, and they basically said, they're waiting on. They were kind of out of the picture at this point. They were hired to design. They weren't hired for construction oversight or anything. So they did respond, but we didn't hear anything from Chris Nickerson Design until I think a couple emails in, and there was, I forget how it came up, but they responded back that it was, I think the response was, it's a hard time of year to mobilize, or something along those lines.
And when was that?
It was in October or early November.
That's fine.
So the concerns the Hill houses had were then, well, let me take a step back. I had requested to meet on site with them. I wanted to meet on site with the applicant.
Okay.
Whether it's Keach Nordstrom, Chris Nickerson, or some other person representing the applicant. Because I had some concerns. I mentioned what the concerns were, and at that time it was mostly at the Hill House, associated with them. And instead of meeting on site, they went ahead and made some, upgrades. They put in this pond skimmer, grate on the structure, which I had concerns that it's not load rated. It's not, I found out it's not, that when we met the other day, they admitted it's not meant for traffic. Then they paved the depression around this leaching catch basin before anybody said that, you know, what they did with that grate was approved. So I think at that point is when it got brought to your attention, to the board's attention, and that's when we discussed it at I think it was our last meeting. That there were a couple other things that we brought up: the puddle in the front at the western entrance, the dumpster enclosure. I think that was all that we really talked about at the last one. And you guys had the board had some concerns that the drainage system hadn't been inspected. Now, since the previous meeting, I've been in contact with Chris Nickerson of Chris Nickerson Design, the gentleman at Keach Nordstrom, and Brett, who is you represent Chris Nickerson or the actual owner of the property? I don't know.
It would be the applicant, the owner applicant.
So we met earlier this week to discuss solutions to the problems. And actually, I'm missing another key factor. So I did get pictures of the construction, and I found many missing aspects of the detail that was produced by Keach Nordstrom. So there's this dual pipe infiltration system between catch basins that, so it's dual perforated pipe on top of a 12-inch bed of stone, and there's a 12 inches of stone above it, and it's wrapped in geotextile fabric. The detail said it's 77 feet long, and that's to the outside of the elbows, and at the far end, on the outletting end, is a reducer from 12-inch to 6-inch so that it retains water so that it can infiltrate into the ground. So what I found in the pictures was there's no stone underneath the pipe. The amount of fabric that was placed underneath the pipe wasn't even wide enough to be viewed on the outside of the two pipes. So basically it's a tiny strip of fabric, and that fabric is just on the virgin soil in the excavation. The other thing I noticed was they showed the full length of the system to the elbows, and it was 3 lengths of pipe, which is 60 feet.
60 feet.
So it didn't have the adequate length, it didn't have the stone, and then the other piece, one of the key pieces that was missing was that reducer. And then I don't know if you'll all remember, but we talked about the inspection ports so that they could look down into the system. Those were left out completely. So I met with everyone. Joanne met with us at Town Hall, and then we brought the rest of the meeting to the site to discuss solutions. And the applicant has offered to, or has presented that they will excavate the system and install it correctly. They will contact DPW with a date that they're going to do this work, and DPW will go and make sure it's done correctly. For the Hill House piece, I think I actually went out a couple of weeks ago and I took some shots, and I didn't have them the day that we were out there, but they're going to put a 4-inch frame and grate on, and I believe it will drain, and they're going to pave to it. If it doesn't, they'll have to figure out something else to do, but I'm pretty confident it will. They're going to do some grading along the Hill House piece to stop any excess water from going over. It'll detain it and keep it at that existing leaching catch basin, so it won't be leaving.
Is that a new leaching catch basin?
This is the old one that'll have, the new one is at parking lot level, and then the old one's about a foot lower,
So it's an overflow type arrangement?
it'll be like an overflow, yeah. And I did check, I went out there on a day that it was raining, and the grading of the rear driveway does send the majority of the water to the new structure. So there's some that will, basically the the narrow driveway on the east side of the property goes to it's somewhat of a grass swale between the two pieces, and it'll direct the water to the existing leach and catch basin. I believe it will, I don't think the hill houses are gonna see water anymore after they do this grading. And then the front, so that's that piece, the infiltration system we talked about, and then the western entrance. What happened there was, on the plan, there was a pavement joint that was more on the applicant's property, and they were gonna keep a good portion of the existing pavement. What the contractor told me was the pavement wasn't in good condition, and they kind of had to chase it towards the road. And I have some pictures in here, but you'll see the new pavement humps up and it goes down into the existing pavement. So they've basically created this wall. And then on the western side of that entrance is a grass berm that Mr. Parkhurst requested to stop the water from their property going onto his. We've come up with a solution that's not ideal, but it's going to solve the icing issue that I foresee if we don't do anything. So they're going to actually cut a portion of their pavement out to the lowest point of the driveway, of that driveway seam, and kind of almost make a little depression swale towards Brad's property, Mr. Parkhurst's, and then they're going to remove a portion of that grass berm, so that there is a catch basin on Mr. Parkhurst's property. The town of Goffstown has a drainage easement for that catch basin. It was put in because of the town's water, I believe, entering his property. So that's the solution we've come up with. They're offering to do the driveway, everything at the Hill Houses piece this season, but they requested to do the infiltration one next season, which I think I should say they are going to put the reducer on this year. He's already ordered the contractors ordered the reducer, so we can at least get
The
some
same
of that.
contractor that did it wrong and never got inspections, he's going back over there now and do some more work.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
So, what I'd like to know, did you consider putting a catch basin at the end of the driveway and conveying that water to the Parkhurst via piping instead of going overland?
There's a large group of mature trees that are in direct line of
Okay.
it.
I'm fine.
So there's just this cluster of good-sized trees that I wouldn't want to impact. And unfortunately, the town system is that there's a pervious pavement shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's just a 6-inch pipe through there, so we didn't want to send
Yep.
any significant flow into that.
Tim,
College?
so this is a perfect example of why we should be requiring stamped as-built plans.
We just talked about it on the
Yeah.
last application.
Yeah, I know,
They are doing as-built. Keach was on site one day doing as-built, but
Well, we're gonna have to have some more inspection requirements
Yeah,
on future
that's my
applications as
point.
well. This is ridiculous. And
It is.
I was led to believe by you that you called this group, I don't know who you called, but they were extremely non-responsive to DPW. Is that a
they
fact?
were at the beginning, yes.
When was the beginning? During construction?
During construction, we received no notification of
And
it.
wasn't there a requirement on the plan that all these elements need to be inspected by DPW?
Yes.
And they just ignored all those regulations and conditions and just decided to just do it and do what they want?
Eric did inform them they could take pictures of the installation.
I would
of the
appreciate
drainage.
if we could eliminate
We will
that
stop, we will not do that
in the
again.
future.
Yeah, we will not do that again.
So you have worked out an an agreement with these folks
Yes,
as to how
so-
these remedies are gonna be resolved?
Yeah, so, in your packet that I think was provided tonight, it's got this as your cover sheet,
Yeah,
is my memo, and I'll look through it once again to just make sure I didn't miss any of the things.
in our packet that we got tonight? Okay, yep, got it. Please.
Aren't the asphalt batch closed? Is it too late to repave?
They,
Repave?
Plants are closing this week.
they were hoping to do it this week, so
they'll scoop it in.
That was their,
Most plants
when
are
we
supposed
met,
to
they
come
said they were hoping to do it this week or next week, but if the plant's closed, then,
I don't really want to go through this entire document. I want to.
No, I don't think we have to.
I want
I'm-
it to be your assurance that it's for your agreement, you're going to handle this, because this is unnecessary for us to labor over this tonight.
that's fine. The one thing I think I would like to bring to your attention that I didn't was the Hill Houses asked that the,
Is that in the letter we received?
maybe, I'm not sure.
We got another comment.
Yeah, so they have basically asked that these catch basins be maintained properly and frequently. So I observed when I'm back there that there's a lot of leaves that get collected in there, and I think that's why the original existing one got buried. So I'd like to see this corner inspected and maintained twice a year, and we get reports about the inspection and maintenance, so that we can ensure that it's not going to be buried under 4 inches of loam again.
Yeah, well, that's good for a leaching catch basin when the loam's down inside.
Yeah.
I have a question, Tim.
Jim, please.
How much staff time have you devoted to this?
More than I should have.
And what do we charge for our spouse?
Do we have an escrow account?
We do have an escrow account.
And
for
is
Have
us.
they
this-
been keeping it current?
I haven't invoiced
we need
any
to-
of
that's
it, but
question one.
I want to invoice our
keeping it down.
time.
Yeah.
This has been,
Every nickel of it.
our volunteer time is one
Especially
thing,
since
just
you're-
staff time.
Especially since they were unresponsive to your call.
I guess the question, I'm pissed, is do we do a revocation but suspend it until they do the work and then put it into effect? 'Cause I don't want to go through this drill again, and these guys behave by disregarding you, disrespecting you, and not doing the work. Why do we have any assurance at all that they're going to do it this time? And it's deferred anyway. We're going to be dealing with all these problems over the winter because they didn't do it right, and their neighbors are going to be dealing with these problems over the winter because they didn't do it right. Why are we giving them any benefit to finally come in and say, oh, you caught us, now we're going to do it right? Oh, well.
And it's funny how it all happened because of talk of a revocation came up. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be here tonight. You'll get your chance.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this board want to have anything to say before I let the folks at the table speak? Because it would be good to hear from them at some point here.
This is a discussion, this is not a hearing. We'll have to have a revocation hearing if we do that, but I'm inclined to do that anyway.
I would like to know from Matt and the other gentleman
Brett.
about Brett, about when you'll get a chance to identify yourselves, thank you, about what they've discussed with Scott and what they've agreed to and where we are in this
And what
process.
assurance do we have this actually going to happen? And what's going to happen in the meantime, all these problems they didn't cure or they created? Because we have a winter coming on.
Did you say the water going to Brad's property will be done prior to the winter happening, so that stormwater that's collecting out on Mass Road is going to
Yes.
have an avenue?
That's one of the ones that they want to solve.
Doesn't Brad have to?
ASAP.
I understand, Jim, I'm just looking at for some relief, if anything. Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask Matt and Brad to speak, if you could, for the record, please, both your names.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Matt Pearson with Keach Norsham Associates. I think first thing it has to have is a little discussion here. As much as you may be pissed off, our reputation looks like shit because of something like this.
We don't gonna say
First thing
that.
said. But, first thing said, once we get it, we are, you know, you guys, I've been in front of this board for 27 years. Back in the 80s, we had lots of problems like this. We worked with DPWs and engineers to find ways to correct this. Our proposals to all of our clients, the same guy who was just here with you, is 2 approvals. We're not involved
We
during
understand,
construction.
we
Okay.
understand your,
No, so I just want to make sure that this wasn't like, you know, I researched this guy last week and found out more about him, but I don't research contractors, that's not our job. So with that said, there was nothing that K&A did to try and dupe the town or any of that stuff here.
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, I just
and
want to make
Scott's
sure that.
Scott's already defended you. by the
Yeah,
way.
I mentioned
That's right,
that
I
you
just want to
guys
make sure that was the case.
responded, yeah.
Then as far as getting back, once, you know, we got the email on 10/21 at 12:45 on a Friday. Everybody in my office now is under 35. We stop at noon on Fridays. It's pretty cool at 52. I get to go home at 12 o'clock. It's pretty nice, but we're not there. We sent an email to Chris on that Monday at 8:45, said, what the hell's going on out there? Go fix it. That 5 days went by, we thought would assume, get your ass out there and fix it. He didn't. That Monday on the 3rd is when the conversation started going back and forth. So yes, there was 5 days between that Monday and the following Monday that K&A didn't get directly involved, because again, we're not getting paid. I mean, this isn't we're not even on a contract for any of this, so the same thing that he was saying. So we didn't try to do anything on that sense there. Now, the inspections, all that, we, as the engineers, we rely on you guys to make sure they're implementing our plans. We do have to work together to make sure this happens. This is horrendous. This is the first time in 27 years I've had a contractor this bad on site. I mean, we got pictures that me and Scott saw last week. There's no stone under the, I mean, it's on the detail, how hard, it's pretty easy to read.
Yeah,
You know?
it almost was like the detail was ignored when it
The
was.
guy just did what he wanted to do, and I don't know, and unfortunately for Chris, he doesn't live in this area. He's down south, so he wasn't up here every day watching his inspector. He probably should have been down too, but again, I get where you guys are at. I'm just as pissed off because of our name on this here, and you know I've been in
Did
front of
we
you guys
have
a
a
while.
plan note that certified as-built are required for this project? Does anybody know that?
Did we get the, I think she put the approval conditions in our packet.
Can I make a recommendation on that, though? That doesn't cover what would have happened here, because the
Well-
stuff that goes underneath the ground, we don't always
Yeah.
get to.
All I'm saying
You know what I
that
mean?
is if Keach Nordstrom is gonna provide a certified as-built, that the plan was installed in accordance with the plans that were drawn and
Yep.
submitted to this board, then it's almost Keach Nordstrom's obligation to investigate and see what they're doing, because if you're gonna put your stamp on it,
That's-
and it comes back, then once again, it's gonna come back on you guys.
So that as-built is stamped and certified that we went out to the catch basin and we got the invert in and the invert out of that catch basin, the rim elevation.
Well,
We have no idea of knowing how much stone they put on. No, I'm just saying.
I'm saying that we have to be more thorough with our requirements for,
You could say you want
Certified
a
as-built.
drainage
Number 21.
system. That's
Condition
what I'm
number
getting.
21 shall provide an as-built showing the construction was completed according to the plan.
and
It
if
is one of our proof.
and if the plan says that there's 12 inches of stone under the pipe, then it's not in accordance with the plan.
Well, there is no as-built that we do that specs how much stone is
Well, then I
any,
think
no,
we're
but
gonna-
I'm trying to give you guys more information. I
I
just finished as-built in Merrimack and Manchester. There is no as-built we have done that we have ever shown the stone.
I don't
underneath that.
disagree with you, I'm saying
Okay.
this is something we have
So
to
we have
work
to
on.
kind of weigh that gets put, yes.
The picture thing just doesn't work, and we won't do that again. We will make sure that if there's some
Right.
system like this being installed, that the
Maybe we
contractor
should
knows
start,
that
maybe
have
we
to
should
do
start
so.
requiring third-party inspections by an independent inspector and put it off on the applicant.
Which our office
We
does for many
typically-
towns, and we would do it if you
We
required it.
typically do. We just looked at this site and said,
Oh, it's easy,
yeah.
no
Uh-huh.
problem.
Exactly. We
Who's gonna
said, you know,
screw
this
this up?
one's gonna be like pop in once or twice because it's barely any drainage, and so it's,
All right. So,
Contract probably
Without-
say that too, so we
without
get away
cutting-
with it.
is it Brad off, I'm sorry.
Brett.
Brett, Matt, are you, and Scott on the same page?
Yes.
So Brett, would you like to speak, sir? Or do you want to get in this tussle?
I think most of it has been covered pretty well.
Now,
from
for
a
your name for the
technical-
record, Brett.
Brett Allard, Attorney Allard with Shaughnessy Raish. I think the matter's been pretty covered from a technical standpoint. I think there is an agreement based on our meeting from Tuesday. As Matt said, there was only 5 days lapse time. It wasn't really a situation where things were intentionally ignored. There was some small fixes that were tried to be made along the way, even in that short period of time. Since then, we're taking a more holistic approach. That's why we had our meeting on Tuesday. We went line by line to address all these things. It sounds like Scott's confident they're going to work, and so are we, and I think we have an agreement. I don't think there's any reason at this point, as unfortunate as it was to get to this point, I don't think there's any reason or benefit to anyone to pursue a revocation at this point. I don't think that's necessary. I think we're in good shape now that we've all put our heads together, and I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think we're in good shape.
So, Scott, why wouldn't we want them to do the repairs this year?
I just didn't want them to have to dig up I mean, it's, there's a tenant there. It's not,
That's their problem.
I was just trying to not put a hardship on them. I don't know if it's a great idea to dig that up this time of year either, so.
You work all winter. Everybody works all winter this day. Nobody stays home in the winter. And
I
you
mean,
can
if
get-
the
and they-
board would like them to fix it this year.
We're going to rely on your professional opinion, but I don't think giving them a pass, as Jim has stated, to the springtime shows a good faith effort.
So, one thing that they did want for me to relay is that they didn't see the site as being complete anyway. They still have plantings to do that they want to do in the spring, and I believe the dumpster enclosure in the spring. So they felt the site wasn't complete, and, I mean, since those things aren't done, it's technically not complete, so,
So what certifications do we have that this contractor is even coming back to do the work? We have none. We don't have a bond.
I have their word.
We
That's
don't have a
it.
bond.
We don't have a bond.
So we could be granting all this leeway only to find out that Matt's gonna be back here in the spring to tell us that that contractor doesn't wanna come back because it's gonna be too expensive to come back and do it a second time, which is gonna put the expense off on the owners of the property, and we're gonna be back with nothing done. And
Still got problems.
we still got problems. This is why all this stuff. All right. Board members, are we gonna go with Scott's recommendation, or are we gonna throw the hammer down and make them come back and fix it this year? I want an answer from everybody on the board. Nobody gets a nod. I'll start right now by saying, I think we should have them come
Come
back.
back and fix it, we work all year round.
You can get asphalt in Drake, Mass, all winter long.
Yeah.
Because asphalt's not the problem. So I say, my opinion is we make them fix it this year and have it done before the spring comes and we have more issues with water. Collis?
Yes, I concur.
Phil?
Go with Scott's recommendation.
Kimberly?
I agree, it should be done now.
Scott, your recommendation is still to let them do it in the spring? You can.
They can do it now.
Okay, so does that mean now you're
I'm
with us?
going with Scott's recommendation. I mean, you asked for his professional advice. You
Jim?
know, ask me about clocks,
I
I'll
mean-
tell you about clocks.
If it was our road, I think we'd wait till next year, so that's what I was basing it off of.
Because it's a public road and you have a lot of public transportation on it, you have liability
No difference.
for people having an accident. This is private property.
And that's
Can I-
kind
can
of
I-
what I was going
I'd
with.
just say one thing, but what you just said,
Yeah.
you guys will be here next year.
Correct, yeah.
That's
Jim?
If it can be done this year, I think it should be, because if it's gonna have an adverse impact in the winter or spring if it's not done.
And you, Dave?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, thank you. So I think the instruction to K&A and to Attorney Allard is that we want this done ASAP.
And we need to,
And we need inspections all the way down the line.
We will be there.
Jim?
well, what we need the applicant, I want the applicant to pay the staff costs, so I think we need an agreement
I will,
that that's gonna be paid in as an escrow, plus any inspections, LIPL inspections. So that
Attorney Allard is
escrowed-
writing that down, I can see.
That's escrowed in advance.
Yes.
And then we put a default provision that if anything is not done with a certain amount of time, we can revoke this.
Right.
Because I don't want to come back and have a hearing on this issue.
So, we're all in agreement they don't have to plant the trees this year,
No,
right?
they can do their landscaping in the spring.
Okay. And the dumpster enclosure?
That could be a springtime, I
Okay.
guess.
I actually I
I'm
did hear
concerned
from
about
the
the-
Hill Houses that they can't even see the dumpster from their
Well,
house, so.
It's still gotta be done, it's on the plan. But the point is, I want this drainage rectified before we have an iceberg
So what
on 114.
What I'd suggest is Scott do some kind of list or agreement that we can then look at and approve. But with the understanding is they're gonna get going on in the meantime.
I mean, this has, what you have is my list and the recommendation, or the proposed resolution that we discussed, and I had the timelines in the resolutions.
Okay.
So this is the one that was gonna go to next year, so that one would change to this season.
Okay.
And everything else was just,
Matt, you're very aware of the plan. In the back corner of the parking lot, on the north side of that parking lot, there was supposed to be 4 parking spaces dug into the slopement. And we talked about that ad nauseum at our meeting here, yet they never dug into that slope. It never happened. Can you address that when you go look at that later? Even Mr. Parkhurst told me they didn't dig into it, and I went and looked. See how that was supposed to be dug into the slope? You show contour lines on the back of the parking area where there was,
Right here,
and that never happened.
this berm here?
No, the wasn't there parking that was,
That dashed line's the proposed snow storage, if that's what.
Yeah.
I thought there was parking spaces gotta be put in there.
I mean, that was on berm, that was snow storage there.
Okay, my mistake.
So, I mean, it's a little bit of a
I read
grade.
the plan wrong.
It's 296 and
Can I
that's
see your plan, Scott?
300, so it's 3.5 foot grade difference.
No, there's four parking spaces that are bumped out, right there.
Yeah, those are there.
I thought that line was a straight line right to the back corner.
Those parking spots are there.
No, we don't.
I'm positive those are. And if you were to look at the picture in this same packet, I think you'll see them in the picture of the salt. Which that's one thing we have to figure out what they, or that they need to figure out is not salting. Yeah, so
Yeah, I
this
see them.
picture is those parking
Well, I see a
spots.
corner, but I don't see do you see the other side of those parking spaces?
Not in any of my pictures.
I'm gonna go out and look tomorrow.
I can look at my
I'm gonna drive through in the morning on my way.
I definitely took more pictures than you.
Yeah, and whatever we are doing this, we're not waiving any other defaults or conditions or other discoveries, so it's not the.
No, it's supposed to be built for the flame.
Yeah.
Depending upon where they bought their drywall mat, if they cannot get an H20 frame and grate on top of the existing flat top, they do make cast-in-place frames and grates.
Well, that's what I told them, and
They make a cast-in-place frame and grate, all you do is dig around the top, pull the top off, set the new top on, and it's flush with the concrete. So if they can't meet the spec, there's an answer from you,
Yeah.
from your...
Oh, from any of it, is just call and we'll have a conversation. These guys are fine, but what they put a plate over it and walk
Yeah.
away, like, it's not on our plan. It's not, I mean,
How about the paving? Did the paving contours meet your plan? I want you to look at that as well, Matt, when
we
you
got
do
the
it.
as-built, so again, that we have, obviously edge of pavement, grading of the parking lot, inverts, all that.
As
I
long
can
as
take a
water
look
that
at
was supposed to have meant to run across the front of the property, maybe around to the back, is doing that and not going directly out to the street.
based on what I visually have seen, it does appear to be graded the way it's
seen it.
Well,
supposed
just
to.
as long as it's
Yeah.
a suggestion for Matt to look at for his end.
And Mr. Hillhouse went out in the pouring rain the other night and got a good picture of water heading into the structure.
Okay.
There is some, which this nothing to do with either of you, but the paved depression they put in has a little lip. It'll get sheared off with a plow, but since they're replacing the top, it's gonna be put in properly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
if it's not one thing, it's another, right?
Board members, are we good with our present situation here with this applicant?
Yeah, calm down.
Yes. Do we need-
Okay,
Hearing
Matt,
none,
we're gonna
Councilman.
rely on your keen eye,
We're
and
keeping on them now.
Brett, you're
Scott.
gonna use your pen, and Scott's gonna use his hammer.
I will be, I've
Who is going to-
been out there a lot in the last couple
Somebody's
of
gotta go
weeks.
through timesheets.
Who is notifying the contractor that they have to be back out there? Whose obligation is that?
That's,
I don't
He
even have
came
his
to the meeting on
contact info.
Tuesday. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had him involved.
Yeah.
So
He was
he's
there
gonna
on
be
Tuesday.
told promptly,
Yes.
fix it.
Yep. Oh, I just heard that and I'm glad I would prefer that personally.
Okay,
All good.
okay, thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you. guys.
we're deferring but not waiving any action.
Yes.
Okay, let me go back to my agenda.
Two more things.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
So,
Appreciate it.
We have number 2 was a request for a recommendation for proposal angle acquisition, map 42, lot 46, South Uncanunic Mountain. Derek, could you please let us know what that's about?
Yeah, so this is a small parcel that is up on the mountain near Mountain Base Pond. This is it is completely surrounded by conservation land, and the owner of it is looking to donate it to the town. So part of our process is to seek input from Conservation Commission as well as Planning Board on acquisition of land.
We'll take it.
Board members,
We'll take it.
I move that we accept it.
Yep, I'll take it.
Jim made a motion to move that we
Second.
accept that. To accept it or to recommend it?
Well, we recommend
Recommend.
acceptance.
Recommend it.
Thank you.
Motion to recommend. And that was made by Jim and seconded by whom?
Phil?
Phil. Thank you, Phil. Any discussion? Thank you, none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay. We have a copy of Laconia sign ordinance related to illumination. We already talked about that. We have email from Hawks Trailer addressing drainage issues. Okay, number 6, a copy of an email, which is, I saw one in my pile here from Eric.
Here, go Eric.
Staff regarding map 14, lot 11-2, previous approved subdivision shows a driveway off Heald Street, new owner discussing driveway off St. Anselm's Drive. I believe this was Joe Boschman who brought this into us
Yes.
at a prior meeting, and we talked at length about the driveway being on Heald Street. The neighbor from across the street was at our meeting to talk about headlight wash going into his house, if we all
Yeah,
remember.
Is that like,
We talked about it a lot, because they wanted the driveway on Heald Street.
It's a new owner now, that's the.
Now they want to put the driveway. So I'm going to ask Scott for his recommendation on this.
So, Eric has been dealing with this, this new owner. He would like to put the driveway, like you read, on St. Anselm's. So if you, does everyone have this, I think everybody has this plan sheet in their packet. So on the western edge of the property, you'll see it along the frontage, there is a large gap in the stone wall.
I don't remember seeing it.
So that's where he would like to put the new driveway. So Eric met with the owner, checked the offsets, so this driveway would be in complete compliance with all the driveway regulations. You talk about headlight wash on the neighboring properties, not on this plan, but in person, if you were to go out there or go and Google Street View or whatever, there is actually large arborvitaes along the face of the house across from where this driveway would go, so there would be no issue with headlight wash. I think, if I remember our discussions about this, I think a lot of the board was questioning why not put the driveway on St. Anselm's.
Yeah, I
Because
brought
the
that up.
applicant didn't want it there.
And it was the applicant that didn't want it, exactly, so I don't know, I don't see any reason that we wouldn't allow this to be the,
So we're
Where the
talking about
driveway
a non-material change at this point, right, Jim?
Well, that's the issue. I mean, whether we would approve it or not, I think we would, it's how do we get there? And it is gonna have, notwithstanding the arborvitae's, an impact on abutters that they might want to know about.
which
So
is why we wanted to bring it to you
I would
without
think we
approving
would
the
want
driveway.
a notice hearing and amendment to a plan, because otherwise we're making a
So
change.
it is a
to
material
impact-
change.
I think it is, you know, whether we're gonna approve it or not, it's a different matter.
we had abutters that came for this.
Yeah.
Right, no, we did.
So do we need a motion, Jim, to
Yeah,
require?
I would, yeah, you can make a motion that if they wanna do that change, that procedurally it should be at a noticed public hearing it's really an application, a request to amend a previously approved subdivision.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
So Jim's made a motion to have a noticed meeting for notice meeting and public hearing for a change to the.
Yeah, they have to file the application to amend their,
And they'll have to supply us with a new plan as well, showing the driveway's location.
You want a new plan?
We have to.
yeah.
Can't just-
Well, that was one of our questions, is this is a signed approved plan, and it, you know, the driveway's shown on the other side, so we didn't know if that was
He can get, the record.
No, I'm just
surveyor
saying, we weren't sure, Eric and I weren't sure if that was a binding location of the driveway.
It is because it's
That's
showed
what
on
we
the site
thought,
plan.
that's why we, yeah.
Right.
But they
Okay,
can, they can.
so all those in favor of the motion to require a noticed hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
Yeah, there was something about paving over that basin, that,
They actually already removed the wall, they did that, I think Joe Boschman did it before he sold the property.
And number
Interestingly
7,
enough,
I think
the
it's
Google
fair-
car went down this road since that wall was removed.
do we have something, Jim?
No, I just think it's fair to tell them, we're not commenting on the merits, we're just saying how you get there is that procedure.
what's the thing for Green Mountain Power?
Okay, the next thing is, number 7 is the Chattel Avenue application, asking for a continuance. And I spoke with Patty on the phone today, and if I'm not mistaken, Patty says no updated plans have been submitted at this point. So Patty is recommending that we continue this to a date uncertain and renotice, because these people have been coming to the meetings. We saw them at the last meeting.
Yep.
And we were gonna send them away until they were up in arms and we
Yeah.
had them make a brief presentation.
Yep.
So Patty recommended to us, based on her past knowledge of our procedures, is that we should continue to a date uncertain and require
But
re-notification.
can we do that now, or do we have to wait for that date to come and do it then?
I don't know that real answer, Jim. But they're asking a continue, they're therefore requesting a continue to January 12th to give us time to complete our analysis. And
So they've asked for the continuance, so they've already asked for that.
To a date certain.
Wait, I have a question.
They're asking to a date certain.
We
Right,
can- we
but they also had to go back to Conservation Commission, so will they be at the Conservation Commission on the 14th? December 14th, because if not, then we gotta wait for them to go into January. So if we haven't seen plans, do we know if they're ready for that meeting? Because he had some changes we had to make after we did this wetland sidewalk.
That's a question for them.
I think he's working on it.
I hope so.
He's working on it.
Yeah, he sent an email last week that said he's on vacation.
We're just not working on it.
No, I mean, Derek is working on finding that, if they're
Okay.
on the agenda.
What's the map and lot? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the
Map and lot.
2311.
I'm trying to find it on this thing here.
I don't see it on
It's
there.
not
not
on
on that list, yeah.
Not on any of this stuff.
No, it's on the upcoming meetings. Is this Chatel Ave?
Yes,
Yes.
map 23, 11, and 13.
Yeah, I don't have access to the conservation agenda yet. Patty may not have finalized that yet.
Well, this application has a history of continuing. And I think maybe it's time that we stop the continuance.
No, it's just-
And if it were for a meeting next week, you're not gonna get plans anyway, so.
I certainly couldn't review them in that.
He wants to go to
time.
January, not December.
Well, so, but my point is, they still have to come back to Conservation before we would make a final decision. So that's the end of January Conservation meeting.
Yep.
So is that,
When do you meet?
I don't remember, but it wouldn't, I think January 12th is too early.
So the procedural question for us is, can we do this act now, or do we have to wait till the 15th to act when it comes before us?
I think you have the ability, especially if you're going to do a renotice. Because I suggested to Patty, not knowing the history of this, why can't the board continue this, and the town could potentially, if you were making the decision to continue this without, and we could renotice the butters, but since
Said Nickel.
When you have a request for a continuance, you have the reason, you could have the ability to deny or approve a continuance.
That's right, but you could
This
go
is the
with-
third or fourth time.
I'm not questioning whether we grant it or not, it's, can we do it now already at that hearing? Do we have to act when people are there to, but I think we just do it.
So you're saying which hearing, Jim? January the?
No, I'm gonna
next
say.
week, so I
no,
would, yeah.
I'm gonna say we continue it now, but we have to notify people the hearing's canceled.
And we can put that up on the website, we
Okay.
can,
Because that's
Well,
something
actually,
matter.
if you all remember, at the last meeting, we told those residents to please call the planning office the day of the
Okay.
hearing to find out.
I'm gonna
about it.
move then, we accept the applicant's request to continue, but we continue to a date uncertain. So they'll have to renotice when they're ready to come before us.
Once we set the date.
Once they've got their ducks lined
So
up.
what is your motion, Jim? To motion?
We'll grant the requested continuance, but to a
Grant.
date uncertain in the
You want us
applicant.
to re-notify?
And with the required re-notification of the butters on the rescheduled date.
Yeah, I'll second that.
And let's tell planning department.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Phil, to grant the motion for the continuance to a date uncertain with noticing, re-noticing.
And try to notify the butters. Do we know who they are?
Well, they know who we are, hopefully they might be watching.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Polite, I hate to have them show up and find the doors locked.
Well-
Which incidentally I did last Thursday because I got my dates lined up. I showed up here.
Well, and I think that's the kicker too, because next week, this was the only thing on the agenda,
Yeah.
right? So we're canceling the meeting completely.
Basically, yeah.
Right.
Hmm?
So we're, yeah, right?
This meeting was canceled?
Next meeting.
Okay, so Jim has a motion. Any discussion on Jim's motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions?
I make a motion that we request the board to cancel next week's meeting because there's nothing on the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion to cancel next week? You don't need a motion, I can just do that on my own.
We're making a motion to request you to do it. If you listen to my words.
To
All right,
direct
I
you
am
to-
There we go.
affirmatively canceling next week's meeting, with the 15th, right, because there's no applicants now. So December 15th meeting is officially canceled.
So your next meeting would be on January 12th.
And Joanne, we'll request that Joanne make the appropriate notices.
Will you check dates in on hearing on zoning to make sure we can do that?
Keith's got some dates, so-
We'll have
Oh,
to
I'll
do it.
bet.
Okay, well, the last two things on our, some of these dates, we have a copy from NHDS, letter regarding map 34, lot 171, 15 Factory Street. I don't know what that is. Does anybody know what that letter is?
That is in regards to some of the soil sampling that was to
Arsenic.
take
Oh,
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
heavy metals.
Yeah,
These characters-
it's from DES, yeah.
Okay, do we act on that, or are we just getting advised of that?
You're just being advised of it.
Are they in deep doo-doo, Collis? Are they, is this typical?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Well, did you read these levels?
Yeah, I did,
They
yeah.
may be.
Maybe.
Yeah, so
Right.
they,
Well,
Is it a brownfield site?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And
it must be, as old as that.
there's been
Barium,
heavy,
arsenic, trivalium, chromium.
Yeah.
heavy landscaping
Brought
at
me
that
back
site.
to inorganic chemistry.
Removal and addition of soil and pavement. So
Okay, so we've all been duly informed of the dirty dirt at 15 Factory Street. The next thing is a letter from Green Mountain Power regarding the Kelly's Falls hydroelectric project. Do we know what that is? You have
They are
it?
seeking to cease operations in their license there, which could mean at some point in the future removal of that dam.
Ooh.
This is the first notice.
Glen Lake?
No,
Namaski.
Kelly Falls.
Oh, Kelly Falls for Namaski Lake.
Yes,
For Namaski.
Can you imagine if
So,
they want to drain that?
so again, this is the first that we've seen of it. Don't know if this is, they basically withdrawing their application for
Hydro.
their hydro.
So will someone else step up, do you think?
Is this a negotiating?
it's possible some other company might want to operate.
Some other
up.
company, or I thought it may be a negotiating.
It's a nice renewable resource.
Well,
Everybody loves
it's the
renewable.
fish ladders that they don't want to do. You
State will
read-
subsidize, don't
You
worry.
read it, they're complaining about the fish cost, so
Yes, yep, that's
how I-
they don't want to, the
that's
fish
how I,
ladder.
and they hope,
Are they hoping
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
all the people down there will,
the fish ladder requirement would disappear?
well, that's, if you read the letter, that's.
Is there any other board business for the board tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you all at home for watching. We had a lovely time.
DES letter.